Chapter 4286. Second more. Refining God Tower, inside the 9th floor. The countless flavors of the original rules that had been strong and turbulent have almost disappeared. There is only a sculpture of black hair in black, like an ancient existence, sitting quietly in the void, with a powerful breath, exhaling around him, sweeping in all directions, and chasing the entire chaotic space on the 9th floor. The squealing roar. In 5,000 years, the sword art of Yongyi has finally been deduced to Xiaocheng's realm. A low voice came from this black-haired black sculpture. The next moment, I saw the sculpture open my eyes suddenly. A shocking movement, the sharpness reached the extreme gods, flashed through the eyes of this sculpture. He is sword unparalleled. During the nearly 10,000 years in the refining tower, he not only broke Xiao into the ultimate realm, mastered the second form of Tai Lu sword Code-Breaking Dawn, but also deduced the Yongyi sword to Xiaocheng realm. Now he is a world with a sword. When a sword falls, the night is coming. And this is far from his biggest promotion. Taro Excalibur. Jian Wushuang looked down, and saw in front of his knees a dark golden body full of mysterious runes, and a sword-like Taro sword that was closed tightly at the position of the sword, quietly suspended. Immediately, he stretched out his palm, 5 knuckle fingers, and grasped the hilt of the Taro Excalibur. Suddenly, a sense of painstaking connection surged in Jian Wushuang's mind. And the vertical eyes of the position of the hilt of the Tai Luo Excalibur opened suddenly. A wicked breath came to the extreme, taken from this vertical eye. I saw this vertical eye covered with bloodshot blood like a cobweb, and a dark eyeball turned, filled with a sense of gloom. Although I can only use the real power of the Tai Luo divine sword, it is enough. The sword smiled slightly, and there was a touch of satisfaction in his eyes. The Taro sword, but the Taro Supreme was invincible in the universe, suppressing the peerless soldiers of 9 days and 10 places. From the rank of the grade, far beyond the level of the rule of treasure, reached a level that Jian Wushuang could not understand so far. Even if only a small amount of power can be used, it will surpass all the kendo magical powers of Jian Wushuang. Sword Wushuang's big hand turned over, inserted the Taro Excalibur into the sandalwood sword box behind him, slowly got up and stood up. Click and wipe. His body made a crackling sound like fried beans. Prison Dragon, don't let me down. A whisper of Morris whisper came from Jian Wushuang's mouth. Outside the pagoda. Just when the Overlord arrived and was about to step into the refining tower. 2 light rays came through the world from a distance. He took the lead and landed at the gate of Lianshan Pagoda. The light gradually dissipated, the great prince blocked his hand in front of the gate of the refining god, and the corners of his mouth aroused a touch of whisper, and Pai Xiaoro did not smile. Dignity I Overlord actually fell to the point where he needs to escape into the refining tower to save his life? The Overlord's face changed, and he turned to look behind him. I saw Chiang Devil expressionless, holding a long black knife in his hand, blocking his way. Seeing this, the Overlord suddenly sinks a heart, and his face becomes ugly. In the 10th city, many ultimate masters looked at this scene and couldn't help but sigh. Creation makes people heroes end. The dignified giant is so powerful that he has even been hunted down. It seems that this starry sky is an ancient road. We can't stay at all. Regarding the accidents in Hoqing, they naturally knew that the prison dragons were hunting down those who did not obey him. It really should be a sentence, he who lives with me is born, and those who are against him die. In the last 8 cities, except for those who are subject to the prison dragon, the other ultimate masters have basically been killed. Fortunately, their strength is low, and the prison dragons don't look down on it. However, no one came to trouble them. I don't know if they should be lucky or smile. Let's go and wait for the giants to fight each other. I'm afraid I will be caught in the pond. After sighing by these ultimate masters, they all rose to the sky and planned to leave. The great prince and others saw this scene, but they didn't care. A group of miscellaneous fish, they didn't bother to deal with it. Bawang, grab your hands. The prince turned his eyes and finally locked on the king. A majestic and magnificent momentum, soaring with him as the center, terrifying coercion directly collapsed the temple houses of 10 miles away. Behind the overlord, the Lord of the Red Sun twisted his neck, spreading his coercion, as if an ancient demon had come into the world. Seeing this, the overlord took a deep breath, knowing that he can no longer be good today. Fortunately, he was also a masculine man, and there was a flash of decisiveness in his eyes, and Shin said, "Come on. Okay, this seat satisfies you." The prince licked the corner of his mouth, and there was a morbid cruelty on his face. Just when he and the Lord of the Red Sun were about to make a move, ready to kill the overlord. Suddenly, rumble. As if the sky was falling apart, the entire 10th city, nearly 100,000 miles, shuddered. At this moment, countless grounds are cracking, the sky is constantly changing color, and a gust of wind is whistling. The entire 10th city is like falling into the sea of anger. An extremely powerful coercion came to the world, intimidating in all directions. In the face of this coercion, the coercion of the great prince and the demon of Qiang is just like a mountain stream, facing the ocean, humble and extremely small, far from a level. With just one breath, it is crushed. What happened? The expressions of the great prince and the master of Qiang have changed dramatically. Even the overlord was trembling with expression. He was indestructible, and in the face of this coercion that destroyed the world, he felt like a chick and shivered. Only at the fortress where the 10th city lord master is located, she was closing her eyes and raising her eyes, opened her eyes, a smile appeared on her face, and said softly, "He finally came out." "Huh!" At this moment, the bronze giant gate of the alchemy pagoda for nearly 10,000 years was closed and shattered. Countless raging sword-like spirits came out of it. "Who is messing?" The big prince and the Lord of the Red Sun roared, and quickly urged the divine power to resist this way like a dragon sword. However, this path was like a dragon sword and smashed at them, but it directly smashed them hundreds of feet away, leaving countless channels of sword marks on the ground. For a moment, the great prince and Qiang demon were furious and looked towards the Lianshan tower. A dreary footsteps passed from the refining tower. Immediately, they saw a cold young man dressed in black hair, and carrying a sword box, stepping out of the dark and deep inside the refining tower. He is. After the cold young man walked out of the dark place of the refining tower completely, the great prince and the Lord of the Red Sun were shaken with an unbelievable look on his face. Even the overlord was stunned, and the whole person was struck by lightning. Swords Warriors. Chapter 4287. The first is here. When Jian Wushuang walked out of the refining tower, the whole 10th city became quiet. Not only is the prince, the master of Qiang, the overlord, etc. dumb, but even many of the ultimate masters who have planned to leave the ancient road of the starry sky, all of them are frightened, and they stare blankly at Jian Wushuang. Next moment, the great prince and others slammed a violent spirit, staring at Jian Wushuang stubbornly. The great prince even shouted, "Impossible! You cannot be alive. I saw with your own eyes that you were shot dead by a captive dragon. How could you be alive? Who are you?" Who are you? Wu Jianshuang's expression was indifferent, and when he heard the words lightly looked at him, he calmly said, "Are you unhappy to see me alive?" The squeak of the prince's teeth biting. Speaking, there is still some connection between him and Jian Wushuang. In the ruins of Tai Luo that year, his third brother and third prince died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The 23rd prince was killed. Although the big prince was happy in his heart, he made a distressed look outside, and even said that he would take off his sword unparalleled head in order to sacrifice the third prince in the spirit of heaven. Later, Jian Wushuang killed the quartet on the ancient road of the starry sky, and even slashed the 4 invincible masters such as Jinwu Emperor and Rabbit Buddha. He knew in his heart that he was no longer the opponent of Jian Wushuang, and no longer wanted to take the words of the 3 princes' heads. This is the end of the matter. I can't help but, the prisoner dragon was killed at this time, and the sword unparalleled fell. In this regard, the great prince began to declare outside the sword that Jian Wushuang had good luck, otherwise he would die in his hands. What he didn't expect is that Jian Wushuang not only did not die, but also looked at the momentum of the game just now. I'm afraid it is stronger than before. Jian Wushuang returns now. Once known by Jian Wushuang, he proclaims himself outside with all kinds of shouts. Sword unparalleled, you must be proud of it. Lord Prisoner Dragon can kill you once, you can kill you twice. The prince expressed a dark expression and clenched his fists. Qiang Demon looked at Jian Wushuang with an interesting look. For this man who had begun to cut the 4 invincible masters for the first time, he met for the first time. Blood sword, oh no, in fact, you should be called Jian Wushuang. In fact, this seat has always wanted to try how strong you are. Qiang Demon stepped forward, looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes when he heard the words. He remembered himself and did not say that he was called Jian Wushuang in the Xingkonggu. He had always used the pseudonym of Blood Sword. It seems that during the period of retreat, there should be a lot of things happening in the universe. Wu Jian's eyes flashed a thought, then he looked at the Lord of the Red Sun and said lightly, "Do you want to fight with me?" "Yes." The Lord of Qiang replied with a laugh. At the same time, there was a calculation in his heart. Now that Sword Warrior is dead and resurrected, it will surely stir up a stir in the universe. If you kill Sword Warrior by yourself, you will not only get the appreciation of the prison dragon, but you will be better reputation in the universe. Even if he lost to Jian Shou, he thought it was enough to escape by virtue of his strength. It would be a great achievement to sue the news to Prison Dragon. "I'll do what you want." Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head, 5 knuckle fingers, holding the hilt of Wu weapon sword in his waist. Seeing this, the overlord suddenly changed his face and quickly shouted, "Sword unparalleled, don't be reckless. When this seat recovers 1 or 2, the 2 of us join forces." I didn't wait for him to finish. Jian Sword Wushuang has drawn his sword. Wu cry Excalibur, 3 inches out of the sheath. He sang softly. The next moment there was a flash of Jian Mang that made the world mourn. "Hurry up. Too fast." Everyone just saw Jian Wushuang's sword-drawing action, and they saw a white swordsman shoot out of his scabbard, just like a knife-cut tofu, flashed from the Lord of the Red Sun. I saw that the Qiang Demon had a smile on his face before he could spit out a word, but the whole person was instantly torn apart. Boom. The next moment, the main body of Qiang Demon collapsed. Sword spike. At this moment, the world seems to be choking. Everyone looked at Jian Wushuang in shock, his eyes were dull for a while, and his mouth could be opened to put an egg. Just now, what happened? 1. Omega Omega Omega. Kai, 1Z. Si Qi Jian Wushuang's expression was faint, and her black hair was scattered, as if she had only done a trivial thing. She looked at the Grand Prince faintly and said calmly, "Are you going to fight me?" The eldest prince stared with eyes wide, and when he heard the question, a sudden horror like a ghost appeared on his face, but his feet softened and he almost fell to the ground. A sword spike? The Grandpa Prince only felt a chill, rushed straight from the spine to the top of the head, and got cold all over the body. Jian's sword is unparalleled. How could he become so scary? Murmur. There was a rolling sound of throat and it kept ringing. Everyone in the 10th city swallowed the saliva unconsciously. They looked at the expressions indifferently, the swords in black and black hair, and all their hairs were upright. Qiang Demon Lord is the invincible master of the famous in the universe, one of the 9 giants in the ancient sky, so countless people look forward to the existence. But it was such an invincible master who was killed by Jian Wushuang's sword? This is not the most terrifying yet. The most terrifying thing is that the swords of the swordless pair of waists do not seem to be completely sheathed. What terrible combat power is this? At this moment, countless people are trembling. Sword is unparalleled, you can't be proud. Even if you are strong, the adult dragon in the starry sky can rule you. The prince bite in the teeth. He is not a stupid person. Since Jian Wushuang can kill Qiang Demon with 1 sword, then his strength must be far above him. As for today's plan, only the prisoner dragon was moved out to make the sword unparalleled. "Want to press me by the prison dragon?" Wu Jianshou looked at him and said lightly, "Prince, I didn't want to kill you, but since you carried the prisoner dragon, so sorry, you can't go today." The prince heard the words, his face suddenly changed, and he quietly stepped back and opened his mouth and scolded, Jian Wushuang, do you think you can compete with the prisoner dragon? I tell you, the strength of the prisoner dragon, far from what you can. Huh. Speaking of this, the great prince saw that the distance between Wushuang and Jian has been widened, and he stepped his right foot, and suddenly shot towards the entrance of the 10th city channel. Escape. Must escape. I said you can't go. At this moment, a quiet voice sounded in his ear. When did you come here? How come so fast? The big prince numbed the scalp. The next second, a half-moon swordman slashed across him. Under this half-moon Jianmeng, the body of the great prince was almost like a piece of paper and was directly cut off. Do not. In the terrifying roar of the great prince, his body crashed and shattered. Qiang Demon Lord and Grand Prince both died. Chapter 4288. Hey, the second is here. Purpur. A gust of cold wind blew across the city's head. The 10th city, which was originally noisy, can be heard in a moment. Everyone is staring with eyes wide, staring at Jian Wushuang with a dull look. The two princes and the Lord of the Red Sun were killed by a single sword. Oh no, they didn't even see the swordless Wu clan's Excalibur, only one sword drawing style annihilated the two gods. So horrible. Countless people sweated on their foreheads and looked at the footsteps in the void, like the sword Ling Shi, the unparalleled sword unparalleled, and a word surged in their hearts. It is like a monster descending from the sky. It is really too old on earth. Even the overlord, after a sluggish look, swallowed his throat and looked at Jian Wushuang's gaze, which was extremely complicated. Once, Jian Wushuang was the 7th leader under his hands, an unknown little in the ancient road of the starry sky. But now, the whole universe is making a storm for him. His own life was saved by him just now. Blood sword. The overlord shouted softly. He is more accustomed to calling the alias Blood Sword rather than Sword Wushuang. Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes, stepped down in the void and said, Where is the prisoner dragon now? The tyrant stunned and then replied, Blood Sword, he is in the 18th city. He wanted to say more, and saw that Jian Wushuang had turned around and walked towards the entrance of the 10th city passage. A quiet voice sounded. Go, kill me with me. The tyrant heard a sudden shock and quickly followed him. A moment later, the two disappeared at the entrance to the 10th city passage. At the same time, the 10th city around it was eventually dominated, and only then did it wake up like a dream. They look at each other, they can see the colorful in each other's eyes. They know that the ancient sky is going to change. Immediately, the news about the return of the sword without double life, the sword killed the prince and the master of the Red Sun with a sword, spread out at an extremely fast speed, sweeping the entire universe. In a short time, the whole universe was shaking. I was inside the temple of the virtual god. The Supreme sits on the hall, closing his eyes and raising his soul. The battle between him and Supreme Bloodwave, which contained nearly 100 Chaos-era Supreme Divine powers, was almost exhausted, and it took countless years to bring it back. Bloodwaves, wait until the Cosmopolitan Grand Event, this seat and you to calculate this account. Bingyu Supreme opened his eyes, a pair of silver pupils flashed to the extreme of murder. I do not know how many years, ever since he asked the Supreme Divine Realm, no one dared to provoke him. However, on the day Shuebwa opened the killing ring in front of the Taishu Temple, and even said, This seat, how about you? The words did not leave him a little face. How does this keep him angry? It was time for him to rise to power as the new emperor. As a result, the entire universe is joking at him now, saying that he is the most abandoned emperor in the history of Taishu Temple. The killing intention of the Supreme Master in blood is almost condensed into substance. Suddenly, at this moment, there was a long beeping voice outside the door asking for a meeting. Come in. Took a deep breath, Bingyu Supreme converged, said calmly. Yes. Soon afterwards, he saw a master of the Taishu Temple, who hurried in from outside. See Emperor Bingyu. The master half kneeled and arched his hand. Bingshuan nodded supremely and said lightly, What do you mean by what? The master half knelt on the ground, bowed his head, and hesitated for a while. This? Say. Bing Bing frowned, majestically scolded. When the disciple heard his words and bit his teeth, he had to scratch his head and replied, Master Shinkong, the news from Shinkong Ancient Road, Jian Wushuang did not die, he has been reborn, and he killed the great prince and Qiang demon with one sword weight. After the words of this sentence fell, there was no thunder and anger in the whole hall, but it turned into a dead silence. It's chilling to death. The expression of this disciple could not help but panic. It was not until a long time ago that the quiet voice of Bingyu was remembered in the hall. Okay, let me step down. The disciple heard the words, and then he was relieved in his heart and quickly resigned. 1. Omega Omega Omega. Kai, 1Z. See what he didn't know, the throne of Bingyu Supreme, which was created with the best materials, has been ripped apart. Waste. Extreme expression Tai Ching reached the extreme, a cold breath emanated from him, the temperature of the entire hall plummeted by thousands of baidu, and the ground was covered with a thick layer of frost. Wu Jian Wushuang did not die, then they are two virtual temples and will become the biggest joke in the entire universe. At the same time, inside the Palace of Life, Bloodwave Supreme and Great Axe Supreme also received the news of the return of the sword without dual births. Haha. I know that this little guy has always been so hard, how could he die in the hands of a bereavement dog? Since Jian Wushuang died, the blood on the face has never been a smile of supremacy, and at this moment he laughed heartily. The gigantic axe looked at the Supreme who laughed heartily, and a smile appeared on his face. He is not good at words, but when he hears that Jian Wushuang has not died, the joy in his heart is not less than that of the Bloodwave Supreme. Blood. This time the temple of the virtual temple is too big. The Supreme Axe smiled and shook his head. Inside the extreme Shinkong Ancient Road, King Jiujia is rushing into shape and is hunting down a big old man. Aren't you going to kill me, to take revenge for your dean? Wang Zhijiawang's expression was indifferent, and he laughed calmly while chasing. Pervert! Wicked! Mad! The old man's teeth clattered, his face was terrified, and he continued to shoot forward. For this person, he is the master of Jinan Hall who came to kill King Jiuzai. I just don't know when it will happen. Between the two hunted and killed, they changed their identities. The special life supreme from these temples of life, compared to me and other ordinary supreme, the advantage is too great. Especially the King of Nine Calamities is the perfect level of life. The thoughts of Su Jinan Supreme turned sharply, and the madness began to figure out how to escape the hunt. However, just then, he was hunting down his king of the ninth calamity, and all of a sudden he stepped. Oh, Jian Wushuang is not dead? Wang Zhijiao Wang took his hand, a look of surprise appeared on his face. Just now, he received a supreme news, and was told that Jian Wushuang not only died, but also killed the two princes and Qiang demon with one sword. So too, how could he die if he was the opponent of King Jiuzai? King Jiujia shook his head and smiled, looking at the owner of the South Hall of the Jinan, and said lightly, just, this seat spares your life today. And at the same time, Wu Jianshuang and Overlord have stepped into the 11th city. Blood sword. Jian Wushuang, listen to me. If I expected it well, Prison Dragon should already know that you are not dead. Now the whole Ho 8 cities are his people. If you rush in if he does, he will set up an ambush and send someone to siege you. In my opinion, it would be better for me to find the Jiao Xing Xing Zi and Ma Luo Shao, and then think about the countermeasures together. Otherwise, if you enter the latter 8 cities like this, you will be the enemy of the world. The tyrant followed behind Jianshuang, and was slightly behind by half a figure, considering the words carefully. The current sword is unparalleled, and naturally cannot be treated in the same way as before. Even if he talks, he has to think about whether it is appropriate or not. Are all enemies in the world? Jian Jianwushuang narrowed his eyes upon hearing the words, then shook his head and calmly said, then, let us be the enemy of the world. Chapter 4289. The first is here. The deepest ancient road in the sky, the 18th city. The prisoner dragon was sitting on a throne, and the great emperor, the young emperor, the blood sun, and a charming woman stood beside him. He had a newsletter in his hand, the master of the 10th city, and the report of the battle rushed. In this newsletter, there is a detailed record of the return of Jian Wushuang's dual life, and Jian Wushuang's first sword killing the 2 princes and Qiang demon. "Master, what shall we do now?" asked the Emperor Shao of the great sun god. The prisoner's expression was playful, and he didn't answer, but smiled. "It's really interesting. The sword Wushuang is clearly under this seat. He has disappeared, and it all made him come alive." He froze. The prisoner's eyes glanced over the faces of the young emperor of the great kingdom of the sun and the enchanting woman, and said, "Shao Yen Tian Luo Fu, you 2 each led 100 ultimate masters to the 11th city." "Yes." The concubine of the Emperor Dairy's god kingdom should be complimented, and Tian Luofu kissed the prisoner's face and smiled. "Master prisoner, wait for my good news." A moment later, each of them led 100 ultimate masters, rushing towards the 11th city. Prison Dragon watched the 2 disappearing into the sky, and chuckled. "Sword unparalleled. Don't worry, the game between us has just begun." 11th city. The sky is gray. Wu Jianwushuang stepped on the imperial road of the 11th city. He could feel that the past 10,000 years had passed, and the Xingkong ancient road had become a lot more deserted than when he was there before. He remembered that when he first stepped into the 11th city, there were still many ultimate masters, who stood at the entrance of the passage and invited the ultimate masters of the 8 cities to join the major forces. But now, the excitement and prosperity of the past disappeared, leaving nothing but cold. "Jian Wushuang, since you faked death, the whole city behind the ancient starry sky has fallen into the mad killing of the prisoner dragon. Now the whole city behind the ancient starry sky, the dead and flee, even if there are a few still alive, almost all took refuge in the prison dragon." Overlord lags behind Jian Wushuang and sighs. Imagine that when the 9 giants jointly led the ancient road of Xingkong, they can be said to be full of flowers, each showing its different colors. Even if there are occasional killings, it will not hurt the foundation. Wu Jianwushuang nodded, no reply. The King of Kings continued to take care of himself. "I have already sent a message to the Jiuxing Sun and the Demon Chief, and they will come to us later, when we will kill the prisoners together." Qi Jian Wushuang said a while, then thought and asked, "Can the leader of Shake Mountain survive?" He did not care about the lives and deaths of other people, but shook the mountain leader. When he first came to the 8 cities behind Xingkong Ancient Road, he treated him rather modestly. The overlord heard a bitter smile and replied with a bitter smile, "Shake the Mountain is still alive, that is, the other people are in command, and they have all died. But unfortunately, I waited for the captive dragon to chase after myself. I don't know where." Just as the 2 started talking, flying above the sky, a sudden roar was made. Wu Jianshou looked up. "I saw a demon man wearing a royal robe with a round of fierce daylight embroidered on it, and a charming woman with an exposed and enchanting body, each leading 100 ultimate masters, like a rolling black cloud from the distance, came out of the air. 1 Omega Omega Omega. Chi 1Z. See, they are so powerful that they are full of pressure, as if the sky is about to reach the sky. It is the Tian Luo woman of the great Emperor Kingdom and the young spider family." Seeing the overlord, the pupil shrinks. He did not expect that the prison dragon would be so fast. Soon after they arrived in the 11th city, they had been sent to kill. "I saw above the sky, the emperor of the great Sun Kingdom." The Emperor Shao looked indifferent, and looked down at Jian Wushuang. His eyes flashed coldly. In the original ruins of Tai Luo, the king of Jinan died in swordless hands. The king of Jinan was his henchman's assistant to the ruins of Tai Luo. Just take advantage of today, to end the sword unparalleled." Shao Di hummed in his heart. On that day, Luo Fu looked at Jian Wushuang directly. After tapping her mouth, she covered her mouth and smiled softly. "Well, you are Jian Wushuang? You are younger and more handsome than I expected. Why not do me 1,001 of the first faces? Maybe I can say, Lord Prisoner Dragon, spare your life." After I finished speaking, she laughed and trembled. I have to say that Luo Luofu's beautiful appearance this day, under such a smile, is really full of charm. Even many of the ultimate masters behind her have been blinded for a while. The king of tyrants quickly said next to Jian Wushuang, Jian Wushuang, you must not listen to this demon woman's nonsense. Their spiders are the best bewitching technique. Once they are confused, they will swallow their divine spirit and nourish themselves. On that day, the Luo woman heard the words, and a moment of anger suddenly appeared on her face. Lu Mei yelled upside down and said, Ba Wang, you're going to hurt and stigmatize me here. After saying that, she turned to look at Jian Wushuang again, and smiled charmingly. Sword Wushuang, can you think clearly? Wu Jian had no expression on both sides, and slowly looked up at her, calmly. Are you done? Tian Luofu froze on her face. When you are finished, prepare to die. Wu Jian's eyebrows were cold, his right hand slaps Wu weapon sword comes out of the sheath instantly. Ha! A shocking movement, straight into Jiu Xiao, issued a dim cold sword, spread instantly. This sword is blowing like a hurricane, endless power is flowing. The entire mile of emptiness was instantly condensed. Sword warriors come back quickly, this super battle array is invincible. Ba Wang shouted. However, wait for him to finish. Qi Jian Wushuang has already held the hilt of his sword and stepped hard. The whole man has risen to the sky, merged with the sword, turned into a half-moon sword on, and looted towards the ultimate master of the sea. At first, this sword was just ordinary, but as it approached, it suddenly became like a heaven and earth, exuding endless brilliance. Shishouti and Tian Luofu looked indifferent and drank lowly. Go all out and kill him. Yes. 200 ultimate dominators, suddenly should be. Various rules emerged from the treasure, stirring thousands of magical rays in the air. The young emperor teared his hands, and suddenly a large round of fierce day condensed, pressing toward the sword unparalleled. Mystery, violent blood day. Suddenly, under the eyes of Tian Luofu's eyes, she opened up her mouth and spit out thousands of spider silk, and shot toward the sword without any effort. This spider silk is extremely tough, covered with purple venom, like a powerful javelin, a burst of sound barrier sound. At this moment, thousands of tricks blasted. Sword and sword warrior has come from the sword, slammed into the ultimate master of the black pressure. Chapter 4290. Hey, the second is here. At this point, this sword has become a tearing sky, running through the sky and earth, emitting a glorious brilliance, like a knife cut butter, splitting thousands of techniques, crushing past 200 ultimate masters. Heaven and earth, only this sword Guanghua. Laozhan shakes, the sun and the moon collapse, and the chaos is boiling. A blast of shock came from all over, countless gods collapsed, countless ultimate masters fell, and in the sky, it seemed like a blood rain. Unstoppable. Destroyed. Take a sword and break the magic. This sword, through a very fast speed, pierced the blood sun of the emperor of the great sun god kingdom, and then cut the whole person in the air in the incredible eyes of the young emperor. How could he be so strong? Suddenly charming, the glamorous and unbelievable Tian Luofu's face suddenly changed, terrified, and screamed. It turned into a huge black spider with black spider legs. She is quickly weaving nets in the air, in order to resist the dazzling sword on transformed by Jian Wushuang in one body. However, everything is useless. This sword Wushuang easily tore off the net that she had worked hard to weave, rolled over her, and split into two sections. The first sword after this sword Wushuang is out, it is destined to be amazing in the world. I was far away in the 11th city. Two people are coming quickly. These two people are like Jiu Xing Zi and Mo Luo Xiaochang Huang. Suddenly, the two were sprinting, and suddenly stopped, as if they saw something incredible, raised their heads to the horizon and looked at it. I saw that at the end of the sky, a dazzling sword-mongering, like a hanging river, connected the heavens and the earth into a line, crashed into a dark cloud, and penetrated the dark cloud composed of magical powers directly into two sections. Across the sea. What a terrifying sword. Jiu Xing Zi and Mo Luo Arma looked at each other, and in their eyes were horrified. Come on. The Overlord sent me a message before. He is now with Sword Warrior. If I read it right, the sword-like meaning of the sky should be Sword Warrior. In other words, they are now fighting with the prisoner of the dragon. The Jiuxing Xingzi took a deep breath, still unable to stop shocking focused on the head. Immediately, the two did not dare to delay any more, and as soon as they stepped, they turned into two rays of light and at a faster speed, swept away in the direction of Jian Wushuang. Jian Qi Valley traversed the sun and the moon. Between heaven and earth, the light repeats itself. I saw a very spectacular scene. The battle array consisting of the great emperor of the Sun God Kingdom, the goddess of heaven, and 200 ultimate dominators has been like a fort on the beach. Under one sword, the emperor of the great Sun Kingdom, the Emperor Tian Luofu, together with 200 ultimate masters, all died. In the 11th city, there are some ultimate masters who live in the cracks, all looking up at the sword, as if seeing mythology, lips trembling. The sword Ling Shi. The world is unparalleled. The style of this sword is proof that the world is invincible. Rebirth comes back. One sword wipes out all the enemies of the world. Ah, we have an ancient road to the stars. We have been saved. Countless people stared at Jian Wushuang, dizzying and fascinated. Yi Bawang also looked at Jian Wushuang. He intended to help Jian Wushuang and slowly lowered his arm. He looked at a sword and smashed all the enemy's swords in the world, and his face glowed with a gorgeous smile. This smile was so cheerful and so vivid. He knows that the retribution of Prison Dragon has arrived. Two light rays fell beside him, turning into Jiuxing Xingzi and Mo Luo Arm. Both of them did not speak, but looked at Jian Meng, who was transformed by Jian Wushuang. Their expressions were extremely complicated. Once upon a time, they were the top 9 giants, and Jian Wushuang was just an unknown little in the ancient road of Shinkong. Now they face Jian Wushuang, but they can only look up. We sent him far away. Jiuxing Xingzi sighed. After a short while, above the sky, there was only Sword Wushuang. He stood with the sword, his black hair was flying, and his black robe was stained with blood, as if he had stepped on the sky. You are waiting for me. Wu Jianshou looked back at them, then turned into Sword on again, and swept away towards the entrance of the 11th city. Sword unparalleled, where are you going? Bawang and others shouted, shouting. Slay the dragon. Wu Jinshuang spit out 2 words calmly. Boom! A gigantic Jianmong appeared, and in an instant, it disappeared in front of them and appeared thousands of miles away. In the next breath, Jian Wushuang has disappeared to the 11th city. Gong Bawang and others looked at each other quickly and quickly followed. 11th city, 12th city, 13th city, 14th city. The sword of Wushuang, which stretches for thousands of miles, starts from the 11th city and passes through the sky of each city successively. He saw Hubaking, and it has become so crowded, countless mountain peaks are broken, and countless large lakes have dried up. He knows that these are the masterpieces of Prison Dragon. In the 8 cities that followed, the ultimate masters who stretched out and lingered under the prisoner's dragons all looked up and looked at the dazzling swordsman passing by from the air. It's swordless. He is back. In the 16th city, a burly figure hiding in the depths of the ground, feeling the strong kendo breath passing fast in the sky, he felt a shock and broke through the soil. He is the leader of Shaking Mountain. He knows that the day he is waiting so hard has finally arrived. At this moment, in the 18th city, it is also the last city in the ancient sky. The prisoner dragon sat on a throne of dragon patterns, as if sensing something, slowly raised his head to look at the sky, and a weird arc evoked in the corner of his mouth. Don't you stop it? He twisted his neck lazily, making a clicking noise. Blood God's son, Jian Wushuang is coming, bring his old friend out. The Blood Shenzi stared and nodded. He stomped into the temple behind Prison Dragon and launched a huge thing shrouded in a black robe. The black robe was lifted by the Blood Sun, and I saw a huge stone frame made of black iron. A chubby ultimate dominated by 2 black chains that penetrated the scapula and nailed to the stone frame. This ultimate master is awesome. Little guy, your rescuer is coming. The prisoner dragon smiled at him, then turned to look far away from the sky, and his tongue licked the corner of his mouth, his eyes showing cruelty. I saw a light on the sky. This light is like a horizontal thunder between heaven and earth, splitting the sky into two sides, carrying the endless thunder potential and quickly coming. This silk is brighter, faster and faster, and finally, in the pupil of Prison Dragon, zooming in sharply. That's a swordsman. Chapter 4291. The first is here. This sword is coming in galvanically. It was not noticeable at first, but as it approached, it instantly covered the sky and shattered the clouds. Suddenly, the Blood Sun's face suddenly froze. Even though it was still thousands of miles away, he could already feel the sharp sword chi, which hurt his body. It's strong. The word of God of blood poured out from the bottom of his heart. Finally come. The prisoner's eyes flashed wildly, with a touch of excitement on his face, and he stood up from the throne. Huh! The sword on transformed by Wu Jianwushuang, without any intention of staying, ran straight towards the prison dragon. Ha, good job. The prisoner's feet slammed into the void, and two large pits exploded, turning into a black on, and slamming into the sword. Huh! There was a loud noise and it broke out. I saw the two hit the center, a huge arc-shaped shock wave, spread instantly, and set off a huge white wave in the air. The next moment, I saw the figure of the prisoner dragon, shot it backwards, hit it on a mountain peak, and crashed the mountain directly. Wu Jianmong gradually dispersed, and in the void, a thin figure of black hair was exposed. Hit him. It is the sword unparalleled that has passed the 18 cities. This sword has accumulated endless divine power of the sword, and keeps backlogging until it hits the prison dragon, and then only bursts out. Since you've broken through to the end? The prisoner dragon came out of the mountain peak, wiped the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, looked up at Jianwushuang. His face was not half afraid, but the sparks of excitement in his eyes kept flashing. Yes, it's my blessing and I broke it. Jianwushuang nodded faintly. The prisoner dragon smiled, and then he said, yeah, the only way is that it will be interesting to kill you again. Jianwushuang didn't care about him, but turned to look at the Hao Ember Master on one side, and there was a pity of pity in his eyes. The current Hao Ember dominates. 2 chains pass through his scapula. His face is yellow, his whole body is weak to the extreme, his eyes are full of decay. But when he saw Jianwushuang, there was a gleam of light in his bleak and hopeless eyes. He looked at Jianwushuang, opened his mouth hard, and forcibly squeezed a smile. Master, blood and blood sword, I knew that you would come to save me. Prison Dragon watched this scene, sneered, and urged narrowly, Jianwushuang, speaking of this guy who is really loyal to you, this place has crushed his bones time and time again. He burned his soul with a divine fire every day, causing his body to constantly collapse and reorganize. Even so, he still did not want to trust me. Wu Jianshou heard the words, his expression gradually became cold, turned his head to look at him, calmly said, relax, I will crush your bones inch by inch, cramps and bones, torture day and night. Jianwushuang, then it depends on whether you have this ability. Prison Dragon Zhang laughed wildly, countless black chains erupted behind him, and smashed into the sword like a missile. Jianwushuang's eyes closed for a moment. He was quite impressed with the black chain. Each of these black chains was as heavy as the Mount Taishan, and extremely heavy. In the face of this move, Jianwushuang was helpless and could only be passively beaten, but now, naturally, they can no longer be compared. Looking at the thousands of chains smashed by the sky, Jianwushuang spit out 2 words. Cut star. A silver sword rainbow condensed, as if there were thousands of glory in the world, gathered in the hands of a sword unparalleled, carrying the potential of armies to make things easier, and severely chopped the thousands of chains. As Jianwushuang broke through to the ultimate level, the sword-cutting sword also had a worldwide difference. I saw countless star formations on this sword-cutting sword. The silver sword rainbow is more like a magnificent galaxy. When it is dropped with a sword, it is like ingesting a rolling galaxy. The power is terrifying. There was a crisp sound of crackling, and this black chain, which was very strong, was broken down at a very fast speed under the Star River, turned into a silver sword. This hasn't stopped yet. After Silver Jianhong cut off all the black chains, he chopped forward again. In the surprised eyes of the prisoner dragon, a sword struck him. The prisoner's dragon slammed fiercely, and the sword suddenly burst into a sword mark, spilling a series of black blood. Jian Wu's eyes narrowed, and his right foot slammed on the ground. It suddenly swept like a hurricane, followed by a leap, and immediately appeared on top of the prisoner's dragon head. Before the prisoner dragon's reaction came, his 5 fingers suddenly extended and clasped on his face, grabbing the prisoner's face, slamming it on the ground. Prisoner, you it. Ha! Countless lands are split. Jian Wushuang's expression is indifferent, grabbing the prisoner's dragon's face, banging on the ground constantly. The action is violent to the extreme. Tap it again and again. A horrible sword, constantly blasting in the sword without hands. The prisoner's head was grasped by Jian Wushuang, and he smashed on the ground of the 18th city, smashing the ground into a huge deep pit, and numerous cracks spread out around the giant pit. Sword unparalleled, who gives you the qualification, dare to hurt me? A low, deep voice issued from the prisoner's mouth. Taking advantage of a gap, Prison Dragon reached out his hand and pushed hard towards Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, a strong thrust rushed toward Jian Wushuang, as if heaven and earth were repelling him, pushing Jian Wushuang away fiercely. The next moment, Prison Dragon supported the ground with both hands and pulled his head out of the deep pit. I saw him at this moment. He was miserable. The whole face was covered with blood. The sword intention of Jinshuang continued to explode between 5 fingers, covering his entire face with sword marks. Hoo. Prison Dragon gasped heavily, but there was no fear on his face. Instead, he stuck out his tongue and licked the blood at the corner of his mouth, smirking lowly. Is this the feeling of injury? It's really getting me excited. Ha! He didn't wait for him to finish. He had already stepped on his right foot and shot like a cannonball. His right hand condensed into a fist and smashed again towards the sword unparalleled. On his arm, the dark dragon scales began to cover. The whole void air is distorted by this punch. Qi Jian Wushuang's expression was cold, and his right hand made a stroke on Wu Cry Excalibur, and he also raised his sword to kill the prisoner dragon. The speed of the two was extremely fast, and they fought against each other in an instant, hitting the ground for 9 days, and hitting the ground for 9 days. Every time the two of them fought, the void was constantly shaking. The entire 18 cities were like being plagued by apocalyptic disasters. The area was 1,000,000 miles away. Is this still the battle between the ultimate masters? The blood god looked at this scene, and there was a horror flash on his face. Just standing on the edge of Jian Wushuang's battle with the prisoner dragon, he could feel the violent coercion from the two, and he stepped back. Chapter 4292. The second is here. Jiang Wushuang, go and die, go and die. Prisoner Long grinned, sparks of excitement flashing in his eyes. The corners of his mouth suddenly cracked, 2 rows of cold teeth were exposed, and he bit in a blast at Jian Wushuang. Boom! At this moment, the prison dragon seemed to turn into a black dragon, exuding endless dragon power. A stinky wind came out from the prisoner's mouth. The sword ons flickered in Jian Wu's eyes, and he split a few open sky swordsman's hands, splitting the giant mouth that the prisoner pressed down. The prisoner yelled, his white pupils twisted, and then he laughed loudly. Sword Wushuang, is this your strength after the breakthrough? I don't think so. He stretched out his palm far away, bending his 5 fingers slightly, as if holding Sword Wusho in his palm. Absolute gravity. With these words falling, like this side of the world, all fell into the hands of the prisoner dragon, turning into an exclusive control of the kingdom. Rumble. The prisoner's 5 fingers clenched slowly, and at once, countless mountains and lakes were moved and squeezed towards the sword unparalleled. Wu Jian saw this. His pupils could not help shrinking slightly. 10,000 years ago, he died on the technique of prisoner dragon. This time, this technique reappears, Compared with the last time when the sword was unparalleled, the squeezing gravity is much stronger. As if the whole world is directed at Jian Wushuang, the force of the violent world, wants to squeeze Jian Wushuang into a meat sauce. Is it similar to the heavenly art of thinking about the kingdom of God? Jian Wushuang's thoughts flashed wildly. He could feel that all the surrounding void had been transformed into the realm of the prisoner dragon. Under this squeezing gravity, he felt that both legs were poured like molten iron and became extremely heavy, and even moving one step seemed extremely difficult. Sword unparalleled, this is the realm of the realm that I realized when I was still in the supreme divine realm. Feel it. The prisoner dragon laughed wildly, his eyes sparked with excitement. At this moment, a few light beams swept from a distance. Xian Guang fell, transforming into a figure of Overlord, Jiuxing Xingzi and other figures. The leader of Shaoshan is also mixed in it. Not good, the situation of Jian Wushuang is not good, I will help him quickly. When the Overlord's face changed, even if he wanted to do something, he would help Jian Wushuang. It is rumored that this prisoner dragon was the supreme divine realm. Due to the failure to compete for the crown prince of the dragon tribe, he was deprived of the supreme divine realm, fell into the ultimate dominion, and was expelled by the dragon exile. Although Sword Wushuang is strong, but faces a supreme, after all, it's a little worse. Jiuxing Xingzi and Mo Luohuang Mo looked at each other. Their faces were equally dignified. I was just when the three of them planned to make a joint shot and blocked the prisoner dragon 1 or 2 for the sword unparalleled. The leader of Shaoshan was looking at Jian Wushuang, and she said in a deep voice, Master Overlord, Lord Sun, Master of the clan, please believe in Jian Wushuang. This is his own battle. I think he should not want others to intervene. But the Overlord frowned and wanted to say more. I saw the leader of Shaoshan smile with a smile and said, Master Overlord, believe in sword unparalleled. I know him. He is a man who can create miracles. After hearing the words, the Overlord was ready to step out and slowly closed it back. Shake the mountain, you're right. This is his battle. Facing Wanjin's gravity, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and had to say that Prison Dragon was the most powerful among the ultimate masters he had ever seen, even if it was the King of 9 Calamities. When he was in the ultimate mastery, his sense of oppression is not comparable to the current Prison Dragon. Of course, this is also the reason why Zhu Wang never really shot at him. If Jian Wushuang has not yet broken through the ultimate realm, maybe it has really fallen today, but the current sword Wushuang is invincible in the ultimate dominated realm. Gabarina. Jian Wushuang spit out 3 words. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's deities began to skyrocket. A round of Xianhui surrounded him, countless nebulae rising from the soles of his feet, and a force from the deepest part of his soul burst out. For 1 mile, 2 li, 3 li 50,000 miles, 60,000 miles, 70,000 miles. In a blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang turned into a chaotic giant standing 70,000 miles tall, with a sky above his head, and a foot on the ground, looking at the sun like a projectile and the galaxy like a bathtub. It seems that as soon as he raises his hand, he can break the universe and step on his feet to teach Shenzhou. However, this is not the end. His body is still skyrocketing. 80,000 miles. 90,000 miles. It was only when the sword's deity's body soared to 98,000 miles that it stopped slowly growing. At this moment, the sword is unparalleled, and the cheeks are covered by the endless fairy nebula. It is unrealistic, like a demon in chaos, and like an ancient fairy king. In one breath, a thunderous thunder and a space storm are raised. Under the body of the sword warrior's 98,000 miles, the weight was almost insignificant, just like a string. Trying to bind the mammoth giant, it would not have any effect. The next moment, Jian Wushuang calmly said, Yongyi. The Wu-weeping Excalibur instantly disappeared and became invisible, turned into countless thick black mist, and rushed towards the prison dragon. Time and space seemed to stagnate at this rate. What is this? The prisoner whispered a low voice. He was not surprised at the sword-like 98,000 miles body. As one of the strongest races in the universe, The dragon race's former successor candidate has a wealth of knowledge and naturally knows special creatures. Can open the body. I was just confused by the tide and black mist that kept coming to him. This black mist was clearly visible but could not be touched, but no matter how he blasted out the magical power, he wanted to break the constant black mist. But the magical power that was enough to destroy the sky and the earth was straight from these dark powers. The fog passed through. Next moment, these black mists came straight to him, weaved together to form a dark ball, which wrapped him in it. The world in front of him changed dramatically in the blink of an eye. Wu Jianwushuang disappeared, the 18th city disappeared, and what he could sense and see could be the deepest eternal darkness. A deprived force slowly crawled towards him, as if in the dark, with both hands, began to deprive him of everything that belonged to him. His cultivation, his strength, his longevity, and even the blood of his dragon. Under this deprived power, his breath gradually began to languish. At this moment, even the outside world can feel that the breath of life belonging to the prison dragon is gradually weakening. Is prison dragon finally dead? He smiled on the faces of everyone, congratulating them. Yan Jianwushuang, who stands above 9 days and is shrouded in countless fairy hui nebulae, makes people's faces invisible but expressionless. He could feel that a horror that was enough to make the world tremble in 9 days and 10, and the surrender of all the nations, was rising in the kingdom of the night. Starting, 1, Omega Omega Omega. Kai, 1Z. See, that is the dragon, the purest breath. Take a dragon and start to really wake up. Chapter 4293. The first is here. I saw a sound like glass shattering inside the black ball. On the surface of the black ball, a crack gradually opened. A breath of terror that could not be described in any words gradually rose up. What happened? This breath. This is the breath of the dragons. Long Wei. This is the dragon clan, the most pure Long Wei. Yi Beng, Jiuxingxingzi, and others, before the smile on their faces had faded, they suddenly solidified on their faces, and they were all replaced by shock. Ha! Finally, after a loud bang, sword unparalleled eternal kingdom, shattered. I am so black and long, like a giant mountain, like a dragon, soaring into the sky. The dragon's body was covered with palm-sized scales. The scales exudes a dark luster. There are dark clouds entangled between the 5 claws, and the 2 dragon horns are branched off, like a piercing sky. Sword curved sharp. Wu weeping sword flew backwards, was held in the hand by the sword, and the sword trembled for a while. The sword was expressionless and expressionless, looking up at the dark dragon. The 9 dragons, one of the strongest races in the universe, was born to be the rule's realm. Faced with people of other races, it has inherent blood suppression. Jianwushuang, you are the first person to force this seat to use the body. You should be proud. Prison Dragon's eyes were indifferent, slightly twisting the huge body in the clouds, looking at Jianwushuang said coldly. After finishing speaking, the 5 dragon claws of the prisoner stepped in the void, and immediately slammed into the sword unparalleled. After this collision, the speed was extremely fast, and the void was directly drawn out a horrible burst of sound. Wu Jianshou twisted his neck and stretched out the big hand covering the sky. 5 fingers like the mountains condensed into a fist, and also smashed towards the prison dragon. The prisoner dragon and sword are unparalleled. One is 10,000 feet long, the other is as high as 98,000 miles, and under a collision, the entire 18th city suddenly seems to be caught in a doomsday madness and shakes frantically. Countless palaces and halls collapsed, and countless grounds opened up. In this place, the entire 18th city seemed to become a chaos, with violent divine power and coercion spreading unbridled, destroying the site wherever it went. Too strong. Is this still the battle between the ultimate masters? Also the ultimate master, but I waited in such a fight, even without qualification to intervene. Puppet King, Jiuxingxingzi, and others all looked up at this scene and were astonished. Even the Blood Sun is stunned, his throat rolling for a while. As the former 9 giants, the top arrogant in the universe, they stood at the pinnacle of dominating this realm, but at this moment, they were all horrified. Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon fought far more than they understood. Category: compared to the 4 words of Supreme, emerged in their minds. Whether it is Jian Wushuang or Prison Dragon, although it is the ultimate dominating realm, it has absolute strength comparable to the Supreme. One is a dragon family who fell from the supreme state of God, and the other is a special life with a perfect level of chaotic creatures. Such a battle is rare in the world. The 2 men, Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon, continued to collide over 9 days. Each collision was a blast of air. If the 2 were not in the ancient sky, they were fighting like this in the universe, afraid of one star. Domain will be blown. Sword unparalleled, you will die today. The prisoner yelled. The 5 claws were like 5 sharp swords, directly penetrating the sky and grabbing at the sword unparalleled. Suddenly, Jian's eyes flashed with murder. He knew that only one of them could survive today. Prisoner, it's you who is going to die today. Jian Wushuo grabbed his backhand and directly grasped Bai Shan. A rolling mountain range was lifted between the 5 fingers, containing the surging divine power, and smashed into the prisoner's head severely. Under the battle between the 2, they are a few steps back. Every step they took, the 18th city trembled like an earthquake. The buildings in the 18th city have all disappeared. Millions of miles across are ruins. Talented power, long way. The prisoner dragon opened his mouth and snarled, and suddenly, a mighty coercion came from the depths of the bloodline, and came suddenly. The 9 dragons, also known as the heads of thousands of nations, face innate repression against other universes. Under this coercion, even the distant overlord, Jiuxing Xingzi and others felt that they wanted to bow down and bow their heads towards the prisoner dragon. Is this the power of the dragon race? Overlord and others narrowed their pupils. Wu Jianshou snorted coldly, and said the same. The talent is amazing, the life is shocking. A force from the deepest part of the soul, suddenly centered on Jian Wushuang, spreading around. This is also the power of coercion. Under this coercion, time and space seem to freeze up. The next moment, the coercion of the prisoner's dragon family and the sword courage of the perfect layer of chaotic creatures from Jian Wushuang suddenly collided together. Although these 2 coercive pressures are invisible, at this time they seem to have condensed into substance, turning into 2 opposing gas fields, constantly squeezing and colliding. In the void, there was an unpleasant friction sound. Immediately, everyone saw that the coercion of the dragon family, which belongs to the prisoner dragon, turned out to be repressive step by step. How strong is the pressure of the dragon family? How can it hold the perfect chaotic creature? Under the shock of Jian Wushuang's life, Prison Dragon felt for the first time that the blood in his body felt a sense of submission. That is, from the higher life, overlooking the lower life. I Prisoner Dragon, I said you died today. Jian Wushuang said indifferently. The voice fell, the sword stepped without a step, and 2 big hands grabbed at the same time, directly grasping the dragon tail of the prisoner dragon, in a most primitive and brutal, but also the most domineering gesture, smashed crazy. The thousands of long prisoners of dragons were caught in the hands of the sword unparalleled, and the competition was like a loach, without any resistance. With the roar of the prisoner dragon, a golden dragon's blood spilled from the air. Everyone watching this scene couldn't help but stunned. Sword warriors! A deafening roar made by the prisoner dragon was actually a wild quake, and he broke free from the sword without hands. Immediately his 5 claws stepped from the ground, pulling away from Jian Wushuang, staring deadly at Jian Wushuang, a pair of huge eyes, no other emotions, all turned into madness and violence. Mystery, pillar of fire dragon, breath of destruction. The prisoner yelled, and opened his mouth to spit out the burning syrup. This syrup is terrifying to the extreme. Just a dripping spark, it directly burns a bottomless pit in the ground. Chapter 4294. Second more. At the same time. In the 10th city, Lord Lan is located. The blue adult in blue, with a blue veil on his face, was carrying his hand, his beautiful eyes narrowed, and he looked toward the sky far away. As if her gaze directly penetrated the entire ancient road of the starry sky, and saw the two men who were fighting and Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon. Interesting. There was a smile on Master Lan's face covered by the veil, and he said to himself, "Master, this time, I can find you two good seedlings." After speaking, there was a touch of groaning in Lord Lan's eyes, a wave of his right hand, and a black light mirror appeared in her hand. The black mirror rose in the wind and shot straight towards the 18th city. In such a war, all the nations of the universe should observe it together. A faint utterance came from her mouth. Next moment, in the depths of the universe, no matter whether it is the Taishu Temple, the Great Sun God Kingdom, the Great Feng Kingdom, or the Life Temple, all the high-altitude forces appear in the sky. In the picture, there is a giant like a chaos demon and a dragon covering the sun and the sky. They are constantly fighting, the sky is falling apart, and the sun and the moon are shattering. These two people are impressively swordsman and prisoner. Taishu Temple. The Emperor Bingyu was sitting on the throne. Suddenly he seemed to sense something. He stepped down and appeared in the middle of the Taishu Temple instantly. I saw there was a twist in the void, and then a battle picture appeared. Sword unparalleled? Bingyu Temple shook his eyes, and there was a coldness in his eyes. Did you actually use the body of the prison dragon? It's no wonder that the Temple of Life valued him so much, even at the expense of my two virtual temple. If this son does not die, he will suffer later. Inside the Temple of Life, Supreme Bloodwave and Supreme Axe, including the Supreme, also invariably raised their heads and looked into the void. The pictures about the battle between the prisoner dragon and sword unparalleled also passed to the Temple of Life. Bloodwave Supreme looked at Jian Wushuang, who was suppressing the prisoner dragon with a smile on his face. Big Axe, this little guy has become a lot stronger. He smiled sideways at the great axe. The Supreme Axe looked up at this scene, and when he heard the words, he nodded softly and laughed heartily. Blood, I see the current sword unparalleled, which is stronger than the 9 kings who originally dominated the realm. A few points. Bloodwave Supreme did not answer, but in his heart he passed a touch of identification. In the entire Palace of Life, only he knew that the King of 9 Calamities was a special life with perfect levels, and the sword was unparalleled, but beyond the perfect level. Life. Big Axe, it seems that the two of our old guys have to work harder, or they will be surpassed by these younger generations sooner or later. Bloodwave Supreme laughed. Haha, isn't that okay? Giant Axe laughed. And Gafu Supreme, who sat in the void, didn't say a word, but after raising his eyelids and glancing at the battle picture, the old face with the same expression for a long time appeared a smile. The deepest part of the universe. Diwu Shrine is located. They also received the battle pictures of Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon. At this moment, in a large hall, the halls of Diwu Temple are staring at Jian Wushuang with an ugly expression. In the first place in the hall, a majestic middle-aged man wearing a black gold crown and wearing a black gold dragon suit glanced coldly at the eye of the cadre and asked, "When did this sword, Wushuang, come out? Why isn't this seat known?" The hall is supreme, and nothing is said. It was not until a long time ago that I saw a supreme man in black. He hesitated and said, "Master Hui Huadian, I had met this man when he was in the 9 Dragon Star Wars, but this person is still in the 3rd level of fashion. He is dominated and low in strength. He did not expect that he would have reached this stage in just tens of thousands of years." Oh. The owner of Diwu Temple narrowed his eyes, then asked indifferently, "Extreme Black Hawk, why didn't you kill him in the first place?" Hearing the words, the Black Eagle expressed a resentment on his face, and said, "Master Dian, when I was about to kill this man, the king of Jioding Pavilion shot and rescued him." The heartbeat of Jiodi Pavilion? The main voice of the main hall of Diwu Temple said to himself. A coldness flashed in his eyes. After a long time, the master of Diwu Temple fell on the Black Eagle supremely. His voice said coldly, "Black Eagle, now this seat makes you immediately rush to the gate of the ancient road that dominates the sky. Once the sword is unmatched, you will kill him. In the Palace of Life, there has been a king of 9 calamities, but another king of 9 calamities must not be allowed to appear. Otherwise, my Diwu shrine will soon be a disaster. You understand? The Black Hawk looked at the cold eyes of the master of the Diwu temple, and his heart suddenly became cold, and he quickly arched back and said, I understand. The words fell, and the Black Eagle Extreme didn't dare to delay. As soon as he stepped, he left the Diwu temple and blasted towards the starry sky. Inside the Diwu temple, it became silent. The master of Diwu temple raised his head again, looked at the sword Wushuang in the battle picture, and there was a flash of killing in his eyes. Xingkong Ancient Road, the 18th city. This is the dragon's pulse of Yanlong, the strongest supernatural power. If I guess correctly, the prisoner dragon should belong to the dragon's veins. The sword is troublesome. This devouring breath is the killer of Yanlong. I have read the record that a supreme Yanlong of the dragon family, under one breath, directly brings 10 large star fields with hundreds of millions of souls. It turned into ashes. Overlord and others stared at Prison Dragon and whispered their faces were filled with anxiety for Jian Wushuang. How Emperor clenched his fists, a heart even mentioned his throat. Master Bloodsword will be fine. Definitely not. He kept telling himself like this in his heart. Over 9 days. Jian Wushuang, you are really strong, but this is the strongest master that this seat has ever seen in all ages. Even if this seat is still in the supreme divine realm, it will be tricky if I meet you. A sigh of admiration emanated from the prisoner's mouth, but the coldness in his eyes did not decrease by half, but grew colder. He knew that if Jian Wushuang was immortal this time, it would be him next time. Countless syrups poured from the deepest part of his body, and then condensed in his mouth. It's just a pity that you met me. Okay, let's die for Swordsman. Mystery, Pillar of Fire Dragon, Breath of Destruction, boom! A line of fire that ran through heaven and earth and destroyed the world's pillar of fire burst out from his mouth. This pillar of horror was extremely horrible, and the smell of destruction was enough to make the world tremble and chaos boil. This is the last magical power of Prison Dragon, and it is also the best killing trick he prepared for the sword unparalleled. Jian Wushuang's black hair flew, and the whole face was reddened by the firelight. He watched this sweeping the sky, destroying the raging pillars of the world, and the divine body began to shrink until it returned to normal appearance. Next moment, his 5 knuckle fingers, holding the hilt of Wu Weapon's Excalibur, calmly spoke. Prisoner Dragon, for nearly 10,000 years, I have specially prepared a sword for you. This sword you are optimistic. The name of this sword is Breaking Dawn. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival today. Chapter 4295. The first is more, diff. A little bit of golden light appeared. When the sword Wushuang's voice fell, I saw the Wu Weapon sword in Jian Wu's hands slammed upward. At the same time, he and Wu Weapon sword turned into a golden sky at the same time, rushing towards the gushing flame. The speed of this golden light was extremely fast. Like the same lightning, it divided the sky into 2 sides and hit it on the pillar of flame. Can't use any words to describe the horror of this sword, the pillar of destruction that exudes the scent of destruction. After encountering this golden light, it was broken directly from the middle like a sword-stabbed tofu. Fengrui. There is no other special place in this sword, only the sharp edge that cuts off the heavens and the earth. If Yongye is the deprivation hidden behind the darkness, then this sword is crushed and crushed from the front. In the void, there were sounds of howling. Overlord, Jiao Xingzi and others felt the dazzling golden light, and they all couldn't help violently retreating backward, and reached out and covered their eyes. At this moment, under the dazzling golden light, the sun hanging over 9 days seemed to dim. With a muffled sound, the Tongtian Yanzhu was completely separated by the sea, breaking as many as possible. How is that possible? Prison Dragon's pupils shrank, and for the first time an unbelievable expression appeared on his face. However, he hadn't waited for his response. The golden light flashed past his neck like a golden lightning. Behind the prisoner dragon, Jin Guang, the sword warrior turned into a halt, Then Guang Hua disperse, revealing his black hair and his expressionless sword warrior. The fierce squall wind, the sword Wushuang in black and black hair hunting, the sword Wushuang expression indifferent, turned slowly. The crowd looked at this scene and couldn't help it. Seems like nothing happened? Just then, roar! The prison dragon issued a fierce roar, and at his neck, a bloodline suddenly emerged, and endless dragon blood spewed out. Dang! The whole faucet slammed. This sword directly slashed the head of the prison dragon. This is not the end. The sky and the earth began to tremble violently. Rumble! In the horrified eyes of everyone, I saw that the earth and the sky were beginning to split. A huge sword mark gradually emerged. Under this sword mark, the entire 18th city, 100,000 miles of mountains and rivers, are penetrated by a sword mark, divided into two sides. Breaking a sword not only cut off the prisoner's head, but also split the 18 cities into two sides. Destroy the city with one sword. Hiss! There was a sound of breathless breath. Overlord, Jiuxing's son and others were all shocked and shocked. Only the master who stays in the ancient sky can know what concept can create such a terrible power with one sword. This sword is enough to kill any ultimate master in the world, said the overlord, Xin Sheng. He is a rare immortal tyrant in ancient times, and his defense is amazing. Even if he had a battle with the prisoner dragon at first, relying on the power of the immortal fighter body, the prisoner dragon would take him at 1:30 without using the killer. No way. But now he is absolutely certain that even if he tied 10 together, he couldn't stand the sword. The Blood Sun, already Hurricane, fled madly, for fear that Jian Wushuang will settle accounts with him after the fall. At this moment, it is not only inside the ancient sky. Including the starry sky, countless top powers watching this battle, all of them have skyrocketed in their eyes, with a stun in their mouths. This sword is enough to match the Supreme, said Bloodwave Supreme and Great Axe Extreme. Even Governance uttered a look of surprise on his face. This sword, somewhat familiar. Immediately, Gav Supreme seemed to remember something, and his eyes flashed thoughtfully. Within the solar star field. This is the habitat of the Jinwu tribe. The battle of Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon is also shown here. Emperor Jinwu had a somber expression, clenched his fists tightly, and said nothing. Suddenly, a low, majestic voice sounded behind him. Liner, don't bother to find this person anymore. He is not your enemy. Emperor Jinwu heard this and quickly turned around and arched, Father. The person who spoke just now is the Emperor Jinwu. Well, this child's climate has been formed. With this sword, we can see that if this child has not fallen unexpectedly, he will have a place among the people at the peak of the universe in the future. The low and majestic voice passed again. But the child almost died in his hands. If this revenge is not reported, the child will not be reconciled. The Emperor Jinwu clenched his fists, and there was a dare of struggle in his eyes, and he bit his teeth and returned. Stupid! You are the son of Emperor Wu Jinwu. There is no such thing as energy structure. What has happened? The Emperor Jinwu gave a cold hum and continued to whisper, Of course, you don't need to be afraid of him, as long as you don't deliberately offend and provoke him. After all, you are the Emperor of the Jinwu family, and you cannot lose your identity. Z dare to provoke you. As long as I live, no one in this world will deceive you. Baby. I see. Emperor Jinwu took a deep breath. A flash of enlightenment flashed in his eyes, bowed his head and replied with respect. Well, pick it up and put it down. That's the attitude of the Jinwu Emperor. Emperor Jinwu's eyes flashed a sigh of relief, and then the words turned sharply and said lightly, Keep watching, the group of dragons are probably unable to sit still. Starry Sky Ancient Road. The prisoner's head was cut off by Jian Wushuang Yijin. When it didn't die easily, the dark golden dragon blood kept pouring out of his mouth. He stared at Jian Wushuang without saying a word. I prisoner dragon, I said, you died today is not me, my sword. Wushuang talked and said. Jian Wushuang stepped down from the air step by step, looked down at the prisoner dragon, said indifferently. The prisoner stared at Jian Wushuang, and when he heard the words suddenly smiled. There was a strange look in his eyes. Jian Wushuang, believe it or not, you can't kill me? Is it? Jian Wushuang's expression was dull, holding Wu weapon sword backwards, walking towards him step by step. Countless divine powers, beginning with no hands condensed in the sword. You don't believe it? The prisoner laughed lowly and shook his head and said, swords are unparalleled, you won't understand. We dragons can only be killed by the dragons and buried in the tombs of the dragons, even if I am expelled from the dragons. Will change. The sword is expressionless and double-sided. Raising his arms, Wu Wei's Excalibur severely cuts off the prisoner's head. Ding! However, at this moment, a huge resistance came out from the prison dragon. Chapter 4296. Second more. Under the resistance, Wu crying Excalibur in the hands of the sword seemed to be chopped on an invisible wall and could not fall in the slightest. Jian Wushuang, I said, you can't kill me. There was a hint of irony on the prisoner's face and a fearless smile. Next moment, then he saw a huge false image that emerged from behind him. This phantom is wearing black armor, and the black armor has a mysterious pattern. The shoulder is formed by 2 dragon claws, which is actually the head of the dragon. The expression of this dark shadow was indifferent, and he slightly glanced at Jian Wushuang and said indifferently, Human, I am the Dragon 9 Enforcer Long Jiao. People of the Dragon Nation must be handed over to the 9 Dragon Nation. I will limit your time for this time. Inside, the prisoner dragon will be sent out of the ancient starry sky. Our dragon family will send someone to pick up the prisoner dragon and bring him back to the dragon family. Dragon Enforcer? Jian Wushuang's eyes froze, and as if he was oblivious, the magical power of Wu crying sword in his hand poured in madly, and then he was pressed inch by inch towards the prisoner's skull. Click, click. In a moment, there was an overwhelming sound in the void above the prisoner's head, similar to the sound of glass breaking. Suddenly, the faces of the prisoner dragon and that dragon law enforcer changed. Human being, I'm talking to you, haven't you heard? The ghost of the dragon enforcer narrowed his eyes, and his eyes were filled with fierce coldness. Noise! Jian Wushuang sneered coldly, and Wu weapon in his hand continued to stab towards the prisoner's head. Presumptuous! Human, are you challenging my majesty now? Are you provoking the majesty of the dragons? Seeing this, the dragon enforcer was extremely furious, and opened his mouth sharply and scolded, I finally give you 3 breaths now. But immediately, stop the action in your hand. Then send the prisoner dragon out of the ancient road to the sky. Obediently my dragons come to impose sanctions. Otherwise, all consequences are at your own risk. 3, 2. You are too noisy. Without waiting for him to finish, Jian Wushuang directly backhanded a sword and shattered the phantom of this dragon enforcer. Mo said that you are just a shadow of consciousness and do nt have any divine power. Even if you are in person, you CNT stop the person who I want to kill. Jian Wushuang sneered, and turned over in his hands, Wu the weeping Excalibur stabbed at the head of the prison dragon again fiercely. Prisoner, you will die today. This time, the prisoner's face finally changed greatly. Jian Wushuang, hurry up. Do you know what you are doing now? Prison dragon added angrily. Jian Wushuang heard the words, a radiance of curvaceousness evoked in the corners of his mouth, and said lightly, Are you afraid now? The prisoner's expression was iron blue to the extreme, and he heard the words and said, Sword is unparalleled. Do you know what will happen to you if you kill me? That dragon law enforcer represents the majesty of the dragon, and you confuse his consciousness. The shadow is broken, the dragon will never let you go, and absolutely allow someone who provoked the dragon to survive. After a pause, prison dragon's face slowly eased and continued, For the sake of today, you will have a chance to live only if you let me go. I promise that when I return to the dragon clan, I can say a few words for you. How is it? Nothing. Jian Wushuang chuckled a little laugh, and then hesitated again. The Wu crying sword in his hand was severely stabbed and inserted into the prisoner's skull. Roar! With the painful roar of the prisoner dragon, he began to struggle violently, banging wildly around. Jian Wushuang held the hilt of his sword with both hands and inserted it into the wu-crying sword of the prison dragon's head. A sharp sword force continued to explode, depriving the dragon's own power in the prison dragon's body. Just shredded. Countless dragon blood splashed on Jian Wushuang's face. Jian Wushuang did not react at all. Facing the sorrow of the prisoner dragon, his heart was indifferent to the extreme. Overlord, Jiaoxing Xingzi, and others watched this scene and were scared long ago. His lips trembled and said, slaying dragons. Jian Wushuang is slaughtering dragons. I don't know how many years have never flowed out of the universe. Who dares to kill the dragons? This is the dragon family. The people of the dragon family are put under the control of the dragon family. This is the rule set at the beginning of the universe. Jian Wushuang dare to break this rule. Even if it is too virtual temple to deal with the prisoner dragon, it is only to suppress it without killing him. The consideration is the reaction of the dragon race. Now Jian Wushuang first crushed the phantom of the dragon law enforcer and slaughtered the prisoner dragon. Not only are overlords and others being scared silly. Even at this moment in the universe and the top powers, looking at this scene, all eyes flash to the extreme. Well, this sword is unparalleled, really stupid. In the Taishu temple, Bingyu Supreme snorted, and his heart had already been sentenced to death for Jian Wushuang. Dragons have inverse scales, and they die immediately. The dragon's inverse scale is his high majesty. Whoever dares to challenge the majesty of the dragons must be prepared to die. In the temple of Diwu, the owner of the temple wearing a black gold crown and a purple gold robe also had a smile on his face. It is unforgivable to commit evil in the sky, and it is impossible to live in evildoing. Now it seems that without my Diwu shrine, this little guy in the temple of life will already die. Suddenly, throughout the universe, there was a discussion about Jian Wushuang slaying and slaughtering dragons. Someone sneered, and Jian Wushuang was arrogant and motivated. Others are sighing. If Jian Wushuang releases the prisoner dragon, relying on the behavior of the prisoner dragon, the dragons themselves will not let the prisoner off easily. However, Jian Wushuang took himself up. There was a hearty laugh in the temple of life alone. Haha, this little guy doesn't even give the dragon's face. It's really different from ordinary people. I really like him more and more. Bloodwave Supreme laughed indifferently. However, the giant axe seemed to be a little worried and he said, Blood waves. In this way, I am afraid that the dragons will not let the sword unparalleled easily. Bloodwave Supreme heard the words, his eyes narrowed and sneered, Jiang Wushuang is a person in the palace of my life, and he is also a half-disciple of this seat. If the dragon family finds trouble for him, my Bloodwave will take care of him, yes. Why fear? Chapter 4297. The first is more. The prisoner is dead. Under the eyes of everyone, the body of the prisoner's dragon completely collapsed, starting from the tail of the dragon, dissipating inch by inch, and finally like a sand painting brushed by the wind, turning into dust and dissipating in the heavens and the earth. At this moment, the entire ancient sky turned into a dead silence, leaving only a heavy panting sound. Everyone looked up, staring blankly at the black figure standing in the void. He was indifferent, holding a sword in his right hand, and his brow face was so cold that he could not see joy and sorrow, but it was such an ordinary skinny figure, but now in their eyes, it looked like a Lingqian, brilliant visually. There are many invincible in the universe, but only at this moment, both sides of the sword can be called true invincible. I knew that he can always do miracles. Leader Sheikh Mountain exhaled a long breath. It wasn't until the prisoner's death that his heart really fell. How Emperor dominated his face with excitement, his clenched fist loosened and held it, and the Lord Blood Sword was always the same Lord Blood Sword, never disappointing. Along with the death of the prisoner dragon, a Qianquan ring was also broken. Among them, countless treasures broke out, and the most conspicuous was dozens of sealed monuments. The sword's eyes flickered, and the countless god's source stones, as well as dozens of sealed monuments, were collected into the ring. Immediately, Jian Wushuang stepped down from the void. When he flung his sleeves, the two black chains interspersed in the shoulder blades of Hao Ember dominated them, and all of them were broken immediately. Before the Hao Ember dominated off the stone frame, there was an invisible force to lift him up. "Thank you, Lord Bloodsword." Hao Emperor dominated his body and shivered. His eyes could not help a flush. No one knows how much he has been tortured in the past 10,000 years. The feeling that the body is constantly being crushed and reorganized, and the soul is burned by flames. If it were changed to another person, it would have collapsed long ago. The reason why he persisted for so long was that Jian Wushuang sent a word to his brain before he died. "Wait for me." Because of these short words, he waited for Sword Wushuang for 10,000 years. Finally, he waited for Jian Wushuang. "You don't have to call me Lord Bloodsword, just call me Sword Wushuang." Sword Wushuang looked at Hao Emperor with an apology in his eyes. If it was not for his own reasons, Hao Ember would not have flew into trouble and was tortured by the prison dragon so long. The next moment, Jian Wushuang's right hand rested on the shoulder of Hao Emperor's dominator. A gentle divine power followed the right hand of Jian Wushuang and poured into Hao Ember's dominion. He would heal his wounds and restore his power. "Hao Ember, from now on, in this ancient starry sky, as long as I am there, you will not be bullied anymore." "Thank you, Bloodsword Master." Hao Emperor slumped down on his knees, grateful. Jian Wushuang shook his head. It is estimated that Hao Emperor could not change his mouth for a while, and he didn't force it. He turned to the king and said, "Come here, I want to reset the order in the ancient sky." "Yes." Overlords, Jiaoxing Xingzi, and Ma Luo Shao Patriarch heard the words and looked at each other with a bit of embarrassment in their hearts. Today, Jian Wushuang's strength is enough to sweep the entire starry sky alone, and no one can balance him. Jian Wushuang already asked the first person in the ancient road of the sky. If Jian Wushuang wanted to kill them like a prisoner, they wouldn't have halfway. "I hope the sword is unparalleled, it won't be the second prison dragon." Overlord and Jiaoxing Xingzi all sighed in their hearts. Within the forces of the universe. As Jian Wushuang slayed the prisoner dragon, the picture reflected on the void suddenly came to an end. In a hurry, the entire universe is in an uproar. The sword Wushuang has a complete reputation and sensation throughout the universe. Everyone knows that in the realm of ultimate domination, there is a remarkable character. At this moment, the Temple of Life was boiling. Jian Wushuang slayed the prisoner dragon, sealed the gods in World War I. Jian Wushuang asked the first person who dominated Xingkong Ancient Road, and no one can check and balance. Since ancient times, the dragon slayers in the same realm have only one sword. Jian Wushuang, who will become the second person to dominate the realm after the 9 kings. The disciples of the Shrine of Life are all excited to the extreme, and they are running around to tell each other. The Temple of Life, which is one of the top forces in the universe, has been silent for too long, but this time, the Supreme of the Blood Wave and the Great Axe first killed the Taisyan Temple, and informed the entire universe that all disciples of the Temple of Life would not allow disgrace. After the sword Wushuang slaughtered the dragon successfully, asked the first person in the ancient road of Xingkong. They felt the power of the Shrine of Life like never before. How lucky and honorable! These 8 words are deeply imprinted in the minds of every disciple in the Temple of Life. At the moment, within the 6th mountain, the frost-like frost that just passed the gate looked at the high-altitude disciples of Life Shrine and found that they were all excited. They could not help but frown and stopped a shrine disciple, wondering, dare ask what happened in the shrine? Everyone was so excited. The apprentice of the Shrine of Life heard that the eyes turned. The news of the sword's death was unveiled some time ago, and the blockade was ordered by the Supreme Master of Blood. Now the sword has returned without double life and asks the ancient's first person on the road, should I be able to say it? After clearing his throat, the disciple of the Shrine of Life shouted in congratulations, "Ma'am, you don't know. Your husband is unparalleled, and now he is the first person in Xingkong Ancient Road." "Okay. Lung Rushuang frowned, his heart darkened, and it seemed that he had missed many things during the period of retreat. Immediately she asked, "Could you tell me this in detail, brother?" "Of course." The battle about Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon began to spread out at an extremely fast speed to all parts of the universe. For a while, all parts of the universe were full of discussions about Jian Wushuang. For those who have good things, Jian Wushuang is under the supremacy and dominates. At this moment, in a lonely star field in the universe. This star domain name is a virtual wind star domain, and it is not ranked in the major star domains in the universe. Resources in the star domain are scarce. Few strong people are willing to stay. The highest one is the ultimate master. In the virtual wind star domain, the largest astral realm is in the Sanyang astral realm. A mountain peak towers into the clouds, and its top is surrounded by clouds and mist all year round. There has been a rumor in the mountain astral world that there are immortals living on this mountain peak. A young man with a good-looking face and a pretty playful young girl who was born with eccentric spirits were sitting on the edge of a mountain peak, shaking white tender and jade-like thin legs. If Jian Wushuang is here, they will recognize that these two people are in the ruins of Tai Luo, and the water which who has had a relationship with him dominates his disciples. Chapter 4298. Second more. Sister Qingxi, are you thinking about that person again? Ran Gu sat next to her with a butt, glancing at her, and said narrowly. Qingxi heard the words, and that pretty face could not help but suddenly became red, angrily. Brother, what are you talking about? Don't bullshit. She opened her teeth and danced like a bravery tiger. When Rangu saw this, he laughed suddenly. I didn't say that person's name, how do you know who I'm talking about? After saying that, he reached out and rubbed Kings's hair, and smiled and said, although we don't have much contact with the Bloodsword brothers, but I can see that he must be a Dragon Phoenix character. Why is it liking him? Shameless. After a pause, he continued, again, the master has already said it, and is willing to find the Bloodsword brother for you. Qingxi heard that her face was flushed with red, without refuting it, but she lowered her head and did not dare to look at Rangu. The two jade hands squeezed the corners of the clothes tightly. At this moment, a ray of light came from the sky. Rangu and Qingxi quickly got up and stood up. Master is back. Xian Guang dissipated, revealing the figure of an old man, who was the master of the water which who had swords and had no friendship in the ruins of Tai Luo. Master, Sister Qingxi is thinking about that person again. Have you heard about the Bloodsword brothers? Rangu said with a smile. Master, don't listen to my brother talking nonsense. Qingxi gave Rangu a white look, but deep in his eyes, the color of expectation couldn't be hidden. However, today's master of the water which has a strange expression. He looked at Qingxi with a complex look and slowly said, Qingxi, stop on the matter of Bloodsword, you don't have to think about it. What? When Qingxi shuddered, he quickly raised his head and looked at the master of the water witch. The water witch dominated his expressionless face, and after speaking he said nothing, striding past them. Master, why? Rangu's face was anxious, and she shouted towards the back of the water witch. Hearing the question, the water witch dominated. No reason. The water witch master stepped into a compartment. Alas! The door of the compartment was closed tightly. Outside the room, Qingxi bit his lower lip, and a mist of water gradually poured into his eyes. Rangu opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but at last she sighed, shook her head and said no more. He knew that if Master said so, then there must be a reason for that. What they didn't know was, in the chamber, the water witch dominator was looking through the window, looking at the two with his hands, with helpless expression. How could he say that if the situation was not enough? Shao Shi, it's not the reason for the teacher, but the blood sword. It is really a big man like a dragon in the sky, not someone like me who can climb up high. Cut it out and pull it off for you soon. The news that Jian Wushuang beheaded and killed the prisoner dragon, like a tornado, scraped across every corner of the universe. Diwu Temple, Taishu Temple, Jiodi Pavilion. The major forces are all because of the movement of Jian Wushuang. According to rumors, Jiodi Pavilion has upgraded Jian Wushuang's treatment to Jiodi Pavilion to the highest level. The dragons that people are most looking forward to are unexpectedly silent. Everyone had predicted that the face-loss dragons would launch a stormy storm against Jian Wushuang. However, the dragons did not, as if nothing had happened. They did not mention the word Wushuang. But everyone knows that the more the dragons do, the more terrifying things are. As one of the strongest races in the universe, the dragon race is absolutely impossible to stop. The dragons are just brewing a shocking storm enough to shock the universe. At that time, this storm will not only be targeted at Jian Wushuang, including the Temple of Life behind the sword Wushuang, Supreme Blood Wave, etc., will not be spared. At the same time, in the deep sky of the ancient road, the 18th city. The 18th city, which had been turned into ruins, has gradually begun to recover under the protection of the rules. Inside a temple, the sword sat cross-legged and was silently packing what he had gained after beheading the prisoner dragon. There is no need to mention the magical medicine and the source stone of the universe. The prisoner dragon is the supreme divine realm of the dragon family, plus the plunder of the ancient road in the sky for 10,000 years. Calculation. There are no less than 1 billion stones in the universe alone. And the magical medicine and some top-notch arcane treasures are piled up like garbage. Regarding these things, Jian Wushuang didn't care about it. The treasures brought out by him in the Terra ruins were enough to make him use up for several chaos periods. No matter how many of these things, Jian Wushuang is just a number. It was the monument that made Jian Wushuang very tempted. In this 10,000-year period, Prison Dragon actually collected 85 Fengshen monuments. It can be said that in addition to the Fengshen stele in the hands of Bawang, Jiuxing Xingzi, etc., all the others have been put into the hands of prisoners. Of course, now all of this naturally belongs to Jian Wushuang. The prisoner's search over the past 10,000 years has only made a wedding dress for Jian Wushuang. 85 Fengshen monuments, plus the 6 Fengshen monuments in my hands, I have 91 Fengshen monuments. It is not important whether or not to take them. Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and there was a thought in his eyes. If nothing else, now it can also be said that his sword Wushuang has received the invitation letter for the Cosmopolitan event. All that is needed is time. Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang continued to search for the relics of the prison dragon. Soon, 2 treasures caught the sword's attention. One of them is a bronze ancient tripod without a foot. This bronze ancient tripod is square, and the tripod is covered with mysterious and obscure runes. The tripod that should have stood on 4 feet seems to have been cut off one by one, leaving only 3 legs. Quite incomplete. However, after Jian Wushuang's turbulent and strong divine power fell into this ancient tripod, it turned out to be like a stone ox entering the sea. He could not detect anything and could not distinguish the grade. You have to know that with the magic power of Jian Wushuang now, even the cosmic law of the ultimate powers such as Wu Wei's divine sword, you can instantly find out the reality and control. The origin of this bronze ancient tripod is afraid of extraordinary sound. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, his eyes flashed with contemplation. It's just that what exactly this bronze ancient tripod is, we have to wait to verify it later. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang ignored the bronze ancient tripod for the time being, put it into the ring and looked at the second thing that caught his attention. That is a black dragon token. Chapter 4299. The first is more. This is... Jian Wushuang picked up the token and narrowed his eyes to look. I saw on this token that the position of the handle was formed by a spread-out 9-finger dragon claw, and the tip of the token was a huge dragon head, which was roaring and roaring. Although it was a carved dead object, it was invisible. China gives people a sense of palpitations, as if there is a dragon devouring the sun and the moon, staring at Jian Wushuang stubbornly, forcing Jian Wushuang to release this token. Seeing the sword unparalleled, a snorting noise came from the nose, and the majestic divine power flowed out immediately, wiping out the breath left on this token by no one who knew it. Immediately, Jian Wushuang looked carefully at the token again. I saw the token, and a small line was engraved on it. The 5th generation of Yanlong, Long Han. Is this the true name of the prisoner dragon? Jian Wushuang flashed a thoughtful look. As one of the oldest races in the universe, the dragon race has been breeding from the first ancestor dragon at the beginning of the universe. So far, it has spawned an unknown number of chaos ages. However, it is extremely difficult for the dragon race to have children. It is nothing but, apart from the phenomenon of returning to the ancestors in general, the algebraic strength closer to the ancestors will be stronger in general. And this prison dragon, Wanakam, is the 5th generation of dragons. If I'm not mistaken, this dragon text token should be a dragon order. The thoughts flickered in the eyes of Jian Wu, and the habitat of the dragons has always been the biggest mystery in the universe. Some people say that the dragons are 90,000 miles in the deep sea, some say that they are in the center of the earth, and some say that they are above the 18th heaven. No one can give a real answer. After all, from the beginning of the dragon clan, there has never really been a dragon clan falling to the outside world. Therefore, the news about the dragons is naturally little known. Perhaps I can use this token to find the location of the dragons. Swordless fingers rubbed this slightly warm token. For him, the dragon is indeed powerful and can definitely cause him a devastating blow, but the dragon will never devote all his strength to deal with it. He is unparalleled in his sword, so let alone say how much turmoil will be caused in the universe, it is too disgraceful. At most, that's just sending a law enforcer. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang reached out and touched the sandalwood sword box set aside, a flash of coldness in his eyes. This Taro Excalibur started from the time he got the Taro ruins. Counting the time, it has been 20,000 years. For 20,000 years, the sword Wushuang will instill the temperature of the sword every day, and it is sealed in the Taro Excalibur. Until now, the sword Wushuang does not know that this Titan Excalibur has never been out of the sheath. How many swords? That is an astronomical figure that Jian Wushuang is all frightened. After thinking for a while, Jian Wushuang backed the sandalwood sword box, wore a black waist robe, and a black wide hemp hood, and stepped out of the temple. The 18th city, which was turned into a ruin because of the battle between Jian Wushuang and the prisoner dragon, has been repaired. Except for the sword marks that split the entire 18th city into two sides, the 18th city has already, it seemed like nothing had changed before. In the 18th city, in the king's palace previously established by the prisoner dragon, the overlord, the 9-star holy sun, the leader of the shaking mountain, the master of the Hao emperor, and so on, stood silently on both sides of the hall. Jian Wushuang stepped in, took a natural turn and sat on the throne at the deepest part of the hall, then glanced across their faces, expressing a deep expression. Dear everyone, now the 18th city has been restored, it's also time to replan the rules of the 18th city. Overlords and others heard the words, their hearts were shocked, and they understood that the sword Wushuang was about to perform an action. They glanced at each other silently, all sighing in their hearts, just hoping that Jian Wushuang would not go too far like a prison dragon, and just take away the few monuments from them. There was a touch of excitement on the faces of Shaking Mountain leader and Hao Ember. This ancient road with stars and sky gathers the arrogance of the entire universe. If they can bring them together, they must be a top force in the future. You should know that these arrogances are not the chief disciples of their respective sects, or the princes and sons of a certain powerful force, and they all have the hope of breaking through the supreme. If Jian Wushuang has a good relationship with them now, then Jian Wushuang will truly be in the universe is invincible. Jian Wushuang sat on the throne, glanced across their faces, took a close look at the thoughts in their hearts, and said lightly, Dear everyone, this seat wants to form a large force in the ancient road of the starry sky, named Jianmeng. What do you like? As soon as this remark was over, Bao Wang and other people's faces were slightly changed, and there was a faint expression in their hearts. They looked at Jian Wushuang's indifferent expression, and suddenly came to understand, Jian Wushuang was not asking them, but giving they issued a notice. After a long time, Jiao Xingxingzi carefully asked, Jian Wushuang, what do we need to do? Jian Wushuang heard the words and said lightly, It's very simple. If you join the Sword Alliance, the magical treasure is countless. I can even take out that monument. If I don't want to join, I will not force it." As soon as this remark came to an end, a few of the overlords heard the 3 words, Feng Shenbei. All moved in their hearts, and continued to ask respectfully, "Jian Wushuang, if I wait to join the Sword League, what do we need to do?" Jian Wushuang heard a slight smile and replied, "You guys, I know what you are worried about. I am not a brutal and inhumane like Prison Dragon. The original intention of forming the Sword Alliance was to help and help each other. Shinkonggu, there is also a mutual response. I know that you have ancestors behind each other. Therefore, my Sword Alliance is not a compulsory ancestor but more similar to an alliance. It's just that when everyone is in trouble, they can help each other." After a pause, Jian Wushuang continued to say, "Of course, this statement is unwarranted, and you must take an oath of law and incorporate its rules into your own rules. If you violate this oath, you must not practice it in your life." In the end, Jian Wu's bilingualism became calm. Overlords and others heard the words and looked at each other with a flash of thought in their hearts. If that's the case, it is indispensable. After all, Jian Wushuang's strength and talents are already here. It can be said with absolute certainty that as long as Jian Wushuang has not died halfway, he will definitely achieve amazing results. If he can have a good relationship with Jian Wushuang, then whether it is for himself, it's definitely a good thing, whether it's the ancestor behind him. The most important thing is that almost all Fengshen monuments are in Jian Wushu. If they want to obtain the Fengshen monument, they must rely on Jian Wushuang. A few moments later, several people nodded at the same time, kneeling down in a hurry. Chapter 4300. Hey, the second is here. Ill wait. See Sword Alliance leader. In the hall, at the same time, the voices of Overlord, Jiuxing's son and others sounded. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, a touch of satisfaction flashed in his eyes, and said, "No need to be polite, get up." For Jian Wushuang, now he holds 91 Fengshen monuments, but in fact there is nothing to give up some Fengshen monuments, as long as he guarantees that the Fengshen monuments in his hands are no less than 50. As long as he has no less than 50 sealed monuments in his hands, he still has the absolute advantage to get tickets for the Cosmopolitan event. However, if you rely on the remaining Fengshen steel and take overlords and other people under your control, the gain is undoubtedly huge. In the universe today, regardless of whether the dragons or the temples are too empty, they all stare at him. Although he is not afraid of his sword, it is a good thing to stay behind. And this Sword Alliance is one of his prepared backers. Although these people still dominate the realm, they are indeed worthless compared to the giants such as Taishu Temple and Dragon Clan, but they are all talented and their future prospects are limitless. Starting Jian Wushuang integrated them together, and when they grow up, even if they face any major force in the future, they will be enough to shake the three-pointer. After a short while, Overlord and others took a vow to join the Sword League. At this point, a top force in the famous universe of later generations was born. And Jian Wushuang, after ordering a few words at will, he left the hall and began to continuously refine the divine power and refine it. At the same time, outside the ancient sky, a middle-aged man with a hawk nose and black, like a ghost in the dark, is quietly coming out of the ancient sky. He looked around casually, seeing that the starry sky was quite deserted at the moment, and there was no one there. He immediately opened up a void, and sat down silently, converging his breath. He is the Supreme Black Hawk. After a long universe trek, at this moment he finally came to dominate the starry sky. Master, Lord of the Hall, I have reached outside the ancient road that dominates the sky. In his mind, he preached to the Lord of the Hall of Diwu Temple. Okay, once you wait for the end of Shinkong Ancient Road, you will kill Sword unparalleled here. This time, you cannot afford to lose it. Understand? A low, majestic voice sounded in his mind, who was the master of Diwu Temple. Dear Lord, please rest assured that the sword is unparalleled, but it is only the master who repairs it. As long as he takes the lead, I can crush him instantly. The Black Eagle sneered. Well, that seat is in the temple, waiting for good news. A moment later, the owner of the Diwu Temple suspended the communication with the supreme Black Eagle. The Black Eagle supremely hides in the void, turning his eyes, looking coldly at the entrance to the ancient road to the sky. Swords warriors, the last time you killed you, the old guy who shot his heart to save you, this time I have to see, who else can save you? The Black Eagle sneered to himself, the coldness in his eyes almost condensed into substance. The years go by and time changes. At the fingertips, 10,000 years passed again. 1. Omega Omega Omega. Chi, 1Z. See, in the ancient road of the starry sky, new blood is constantly flowing. However, because Jian Wushuang monopolizes Fengshan steel now, with the increasing number of people, not only did not many kills occur, but countless monks joined the Sword League. After all, in the ancient starry sky, there is only Jian Wushuang's family monopoly. If you want to get the seal of God, you can only rely on Jian Wushuang. And the Sword Alliance has become the only camp in the starry sky, the strongest, but also the strongest. And Jian Wushuang himself was not idle. Through this 10,000-year period, he has completely cultivated himself and consolidated himself in the ultimate domination. Although he is still far from the breakthrough, he has already laid the foundation. At this point, it is only 50,000 years away from the opening of the universal race. The next day, Jian Wushuang was practicing in retreat. An unexpected person suddenly found Jian Wushuang. Master Lord Zhenguan, Lord Blue, is waiting outside the temple. An ultimate master wearing a sacred armor stepped down at the door of Jian Wushuang's box, congratulating. Master Lan? Wu Jianshuang opened his eyes slowly when he heard the words, and there was a touch of thought in his eyes. Now, in the whole ancient road of the starry sky, Jian Wushuang's only person who can't understand the details is the master of this town. He once asked the overlords and other people who came to the Shinkong ancient road early, but they also didn't know much about Lord Master. They only knew that Master Lan was mysterious and never participated in the dispute. It is more like to record everything that happened in the ancient sky. This person. Why suddenly came to find myself? You let Zhenguan make the adult wait in the hall, and I will come later. Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang said lightly. Jane, the ultimate master in charge of communication, went in haste. Wu Jian Wushuang didn't delay for a long time. After collecting the Tailu Zhendian, he also rushed towards the hall. It didn't take long before he met Lord Lan. Master Lan is still wearing a plain blue shirt with a blue veil on his face, which makes Jian Wushuang break through the ultimate dominance. After still unable to see through the veil, Master Lan's true face. This makes Jian Wushuang in his heart cannot help but slightly surprised. Lord Lan, I haven't seen you in a long time. Putting away his thoughts, Jian Wushuang arched her hand at her, a smile on his face. Oh, it's been a long time since you haven't seen me, I often see you. Lord Lan smiled back and smiled. Jian Wushuang heard a word, didn't understand it, and just wanted to ask what it meant. Then Lord Lan has already started to speak. Jianfeng turned around and joked. Jian Wushuang, I want to see you now. It's not easy on one side, it's got to be rumored and notified, it's such a big show. Master Lan, when you say this, you are breaking me. When Jian Wushuang heard the words, he waved his hands and ordered people to give the seat to Lord Lan. Then he burned a pot of spiritual tea, cleared his throat, and asked, I wonder if you come to me this time. What is it called? Master Lin Lan took a teacup and took a sip, glanced at Jian Wushuang and replied, Jian Wushuang, I'm here to talk to you about the grand event of the universe. Cosmic event of the universe? Isn't that 50,000 years before we can start? Jian Wu's eyes narrowed, a flash of doubt flashed in his heart, but his face asked calmly, Master, you say now, what does this mean? Click it. Lord Lan put down the teacup and shook his head and said, Jian Wushuang, it seems you don't know. The number of places to participate in the cosmopolitan event is not selected at the same time, but given one after another according to the time period, and then after 50,000 years, really start the grand event of the universe. The three places that dominate the ancient road to the sky are naturally the same. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He wasn't a stupid person. When he heard what he had guessed, he asked, "Master, what do you mean, now you are the first place to attend the Cosmos Grand Event? Is it out?" "Yes." Master Lan Lan heard the words and nodded slowly. Mandao sword, Mandao sword. Chapter 4301. The first is here. Well, who's the first place? Jian Wushuang raised his teacup, took a sip of tea and asked calmly. When adults heard the words and laughed, they did not answer, but asked instead, "You should have an answer in your heart?" Wu Jianhui's hands lifted the teacup, paused, groaned one or two, then put the teacup down, looked at Lord Lan, and said, "Is the first place?" Yes, when Master Lan said that he had selected the first place, and combined with Master Lan at this time to find him, Jian Wushuang was right for the first place. Sure enough, Lord Lan nodded his head and replied, "Nature is you. Jian Wushuang, your performance on the ancient road of Shinkong has been seen by that adult. He has been ordered to me a few days ago and ordered me to give you the first universe admission to the Grand National Festival." After saying so, she reached out her hand and smiled slightly. "Swords matchless, congratulations." Sun Rao had prepared Jian Wushuang's psychology. At this moment, when he heard the exact answer of Lord Lan, he couldn't help but feel a bit distorted. That is the ticket to the cosmopolitan event held only once every 50 chaos eras. The cosmic event of the universe, the supreme people of all races, discuss the avenue of heaven and earth together. According to the previous rules, the ultimate masters like Jian Wushuang have no chance to touch the threshold, but now, Jian Wushuang has become the first admission to the Universe Festival. Wu Jianshuang's heart inevitably sighed with regret. I don't know how many people have left so many dead bones on this ancient road to the sky. 20 will succeed. Too many people have left their lives here on this ancient starry road. They spent countless years of hard work and rushed from various places. What they were after was nothing more than the place of the illusory cosmic race. Everyone is looking forward to becoming the beloved lucky one. Since then, it has been soaring and has become famous in the universe. They followed, they were eager to try. However, with the exception of the few who stood at the top, most of the ultimate masters of the ancient roads in the sky were actually the stepping stones for others, and in the end they became others, and they turned into a lus bones, dead die, forgotten by years and time. Starting Qi Jian Wushuang is also one of them. Fortunately, he finally got the qualification for that ticket. Took a deep breath. The next moment, the emotion in Jian Wu's eyes disappeared, replaced by a firmness. "Thank you." Wu Jianshou extended his hand and held a heavy grip with Master Lan. Seeing a slight smile, Lord Ho Lan pulled back his palm, and a white jade appeared under his right hand. "Jian Wushuang, this jade pendant is an invitation to the Cosmopolitan Grand Event." Master Lan pushed it with his right hand and handed this jade pendant to Jian Wushuang. Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head carefully and took this jade pendant and looked down at this jade pendant. Sun Yupei had no words on it and started with a little cold. It seemed like an ordinary thing that could no longer be ordinary, but the moment that Jian Wushuang felt, it was a frantic expression. He felt as if he was in a chaos. At this time, the universe was not born and the world was still a yin and yang chaos. He was like the most inconspicuous piece of fine sand in this chaos. The feeling of a drop in the sea and a grain in Taizong is too trivial. Next moment, I saw this jade pendant, turned into a warm current, disappeared in the sword without hands. Later, the two chatted for a few more words. Lord Lan told him that the Fengshan Monument had been cleared and those who had obtained the quota for the Universal Race event must leave the ancient road of the starry sky to avoid affecting others' invitation for the Universal Race event. Fairness. After saying this, Master Lan plans to leave. Okay, Swords Matchless, you have already received the invitation to the Cosmopolitan event, and my mission is complete, so I will leave first. Master Lan stood up and said with a smile. Wu Jianwushuang nodded his head, looking at the back of Lord Lan's departure, and could not help but ask, "Master Lan, take the liberty to ask, what is your identity?" Master Huang Lan has already stepped on the threshold, and he couldn't help but look back and smile. Is this heavy? I heard the reply. Jian Wushuang could not help but touched his nose, knowing that he asked a lot. At this moment, however, Lord Lan added a smile and added, Jian Wushuang, we will see you again at the cosmic event of the universe. After speaking, Master Lan no longer hesitated and disappeared at the gate of Jian Wushuang Hall. The moon splattered Xinghe, and the night cried. Is it time to leave? Qi Jian Wush's negative hand stood at the gate of the hall, looking up at the devastating Xinghe, which is unique to Xingkong Ancient Road, and a flash of thought flashed in his eyes. Today, he is already the strongest deserved of the Ancient Road in the sky, and the tickets for the cosmic event are also available. Even if he continues to stay here, it has no meaning. For him, leaving at this moment is indeed the best choice. Before leaving, you have to arrange the Sword Alliance properly. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself, his eyes blinked slightly. Today's Sword League, under the development of this 10,000-year period, has already gotten a little bit of everyone's weather. Just the top power in the ultimate domination, it is far more than 100, and the ultimate master in the near-invincible level is also there are dozens of statues. In addition to Jian Wushuang himself, the tyrant, the Prince of Jiuxing, and the Patriarch of Emo Luoshao are all invincible and dominate the party. Such a force, not to mention the ancient road to the sky, even if it is placed in the universe, as long as it is not supreme, it is enough to sweep everything in the world. I am such a powerful force. Although there are no strict rules and regulations, in this 10,000-year period, a huge power body with Jian Wushuang as its core and a distinction between high and low status has been formed naturally. On the second day, Jian Wushuang summoned all the high-level strong men in the Jian League to meet in the hall. Early the next morning, in the hall of the Sword Alliance, Sword Wushuang sits high on the throne. The following two sides start with the Overlord and the Demon Lord, and the senior members of the Sword Alliance line up all the way. The sword has no expression on both sides, although it has not spoken, but a natural and powerful coercion that has formed naturally has been depressed in the form, so that everyone in the hall is bowing their heads and dare not look directly at the sword. Look. The whole hall was like a chill. No one dares to speak before Jian Wushuang speaks. Unconsciously, Jian Wushuang is no longer the nameless man. Now he is the king of the power of killing and killing in the entire ancient sky. He is the only giant in this starry sky ancient road. Chapter 4302. Hey, the second is here. This seat announces a message. You guys, listen well. 3 days later, I will leave the ancient road of the sky, and the Fengshen monument will be cleared again to screen out the second place to enter the cosmic event. Sitting on the throne, the sword has no double-sided expression and slowly speaks. Starting as soon as the words of this sentence fell, time, like the same stone stirred up 1,000 layers of waves, the entire ancient road of starry sky boiled up. It seems that the Lord has received the first place to participate in the universal race. What, Master? Are you leaving the ancient sky? Fengshen monument will be reset to 0? For a moment, the whole hall was like a blasted boiler, and the sound of discussions began to ring. Even the overlord, Jiao Xingzi, and Ma Luo, the chief patriarch, suddenly raised his head to look at Jian Wushuang. His pupils contracted for a while. Quiet. Jian Wushuang pressed his right hand and said lightly. All of a sudden, the hall was noisy, and then it calmed down. Everyone is forced to suppress the words that have come to their mouths, looking respectfully at Jian Wushuang. Wu Jianshuang's expression was indifferent, and his eyes swept away from their faces. Although these people did not speak, their expressions were mixed. Wu Jian Wushuang naturally understood what they were thinking, and could not help sneering, for fear that once he left the ancient road of the sky, this seemingly powerful and uninteresting Jian Meng would fall apart and revert to the way it was when it was killed before. With regard to this, Jian Wushuang does not intend to forcibly solve it. In the final analysis, Jian Meng is only a second hand he left behind, only to be able to bundle together when he faces the oppression of major forces in the future. Therefore, what happened to them in private after he left, he didn't care. Anyway, Some of the real powerful men with good potential in Shinkong-gulu have already sworn the law with him. This cannot be changed in any way. Well, what I want to say now is the command of the Sword League after I left. Sword's eyes fell on the overlord, Jiuxingxingzi, and Morhua Shao, Chief Arima, and said, Overlord, Jiuxingxingzi, Arima, after I left, Jian Meng is responsible for maintaining the overall situation for you three, but there a problem? Yes. Please obey the decree of the alliance. The three tyrants, Arima, and Jiuxingxingzi stepped out in one step, and their congratulations should be. Jian Wushuang nodded, his eyes glanced at the three of them. Overlord and Arima both looked normal, their faces were solemn. Both of them were rescued by Jian Wushuang, and Jian Wushuang had a life-saving grace for them. A born promised to surrender, even if he died. He was a son of Jiuxing, and with a bowed head in his eyes, there was a strange color. Jian Wushuang took a close look at the three people's expressions and didn't care, and said, As for the others, it's business as usual, there is no need to change more. After Sun ordered some trivial matters, such as letting Shaoshan command, responsible for commanding the people for the three kings, etc., Jian Wushuang announced that everyone had retreated. Just before the crowd left, Jian Wushuang stopped the Hao Ember standing in the last row to dominate. Wu Jianwushuang stepped down from the throne. At this moment he no longer had any majestic momentum, as if he had become the most ordinary boy again. Hao Ember, did you blame me in my heart, and did not arrange you in a commanding position before I left? Jian Wushuang glanced at him with a slight smile. Hao Emperor dominated the statement and quickly explained, Master Bloodsword, I dare not think so, although I am dull, but I also understand that you do not want to attract too much attention, Master Bloodsword, so as not to be caught envy. Dominated by Hao Hao is the only person who now calls Jian Wushuang as the Blood Sword Master. As if in his heart, Jian Wushuang is still the one who took him in the ancient road of the starry sky and passed 5 levels and cut 6 generals. If you can think so, then am assured. Jian Wushuang smiled a moment, then paused and groaned, Hao Ember, the reason why I didn't put you in the top position of the Sword Alliance is just as you said. Once I leave, this ancient road in the starry sky is afraid of chaos again. If you assume the commanding position at that time, you will definitely be regarded as the target of the fire, but you may be killed for yourself. After saying that, Jian Wushuang patted Hao Ember on the shoulder and continued, I wait for the monk, the position is actually a vanity, and you don't need to worry about it. As long as you are strong enough, everything is just a blessing. Master Bloodsword, I understand. Hao Emperor heard the words and nodded heavily. Jian Wushuang said, He took out a bottle of glass and jade and said, Hao Ember, in this jade bottle, there are 2 drops of venom that I made by holding the Tianxi Langjun poisonous tooth. There were originally 3 drops, but there was another drop I used for other purposes, and I will not give it to you. There are 2 drops of venom in it. As long as it does not meet the existence of invincible dominator, I want to come in this ancient road in the sky, there is no one can hurt you again. Is this too expensive? Just as Hao Emperor was still hesitating, Jian Wushuang has doubled his right hand again, and a small black sword suddenly appeared in his hand, and said lightly, Hao Ember, you have collected this small sword. This is the self-defense made by you specially before I leave. A total of my 3 sword chi are sealed on this small sword. One is stronger than the other. In terms of power, it is much more powerful than those 2 drops of venom. If you use it properly, even if it is similar to Jiuxingxingzi when the body is not a powerful invincible master, with the last sword energy you are enough to kill him. After finishing speaking, Jian Wushuang's expression gradually became calm, and finally she said in a deep voice, Hao Ember, these 5 kinds of protectors, you must remember to use them with caution, otherwise once you have used all 5 protectors, if you get any more people in the sky, no one can save you. Yes. Hao Emperor's expression also became calm, and he did not dare to neglect, and gifted his glass-glazed vase and black small sword to him, carefully closed it, and then focused and said, Master Bloodsword, rest assured, I will take good care of the Sword Alliance for you. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and couldn't help but smile slightly and said, Jiangmeng is just a matter of fate, and you don't need to care too much. It is you who can be the same person who has suffered and suffered together with me. After I leave, I am afraid that the battle for the Fengshan Monument will be more intense and crazy. Therefore, I just hope that you can protect yourself and improve your strength. After Wu finished speaking, Jian Wushuang stopped saying more and strode away after smiling at him. 23 days later. Walking in the 18th city of Xingkong Ancient Road, countless people showed off respectfully. Wu Jianwu, wearing a black robe, wearing a hood and carrying a sandalwood sword box, stepped away from Xingkong Ancient Road and disappeared into the sight of everyone, like a legend in Xingkong Ancient Road, and finally closed the curtain. I walked from the dust with a sword, covered in mud, and unknowing. I returned from my fame, with the breeze as my companion, full of joy. Chapter 4303. The first is here. Wu Jianwusa left. He went away by the wind and sword, past 18 cities, and came to the first city of Xingkong Ancient Road. Some newcomers who didn't come to know Jian Zhenshuang talked about each other and walked past him, depicting the beautiful prospect that they will shine in the ancient road of the starry sky. Jian Wushuang looked back and glanced back. In this starry sky ancient road, he stayed for tens of thousands of years, from an ordinary fifth-ranked ordinary master to become the strongest that swept the entire universe. Dominate the strong. Here he left too many legends. Now, finally we have to say goodbye. At this moment, Sai has some emotions, but more of them are still homesick. He took a deep breath, Jian Wushuang turned resolutely, and stepped on the exit passage of the first city. For a while, boundless darkness struck, and when Jian Wushuang opened his eyes again, he had already appeared outside the ancient sky. For tens of thousands of years, the changes outside the Xingkong Ancient Road were not significant, and there were still people from various major forces stationed here, drinking and buying the magic drugs and materials brought out from the Xingkong Ancient Road. After just glancing at Jian Wushuang, they didn't manage it anymore and resumed their work. Don't look at Jian Wushuang. Now he is famous, but there are few who can really recognize him. The pictures of him fighting with the prison dragon are basically just circulating among the high-level forces. What Wu Jianshuang did not know was when he walked out of the ancient sky. A hawk-nosed man hiding in the air, sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes sharply. "Boy, you're finally out." The Black Eagle's supreme gaze passed through the void, and he looked at Xiang Jianwushuang steadily, and the corner of his mouth gradually evoked a cruel smile. He waited for nearly 10,000 years, and was accompanied by the boring universe every day. His heart was already impatient to the extreme. At this moment, he saw Jian Wushuang walking out of the ancient road in the sky, and he could not hold back the killing intention in his heart. Boom! Instantly, he shot a palm, pressing the sword unparalleled. Under this palm, the starry sky in front of the entire ancient sky is shaking with madness. A mighty power to destroy the world, coming to the world. What is this? All of a sudden, the ultimate masters who were sipping in front of the ancient gate of the starry sky, their faces changed greatly, and they looked horribly into the air. This is the supreme atmosphere. A supreme shot. No, run away. Countless people burst into bursts, as birds and beasts scattered, and some of the slow-moving ultimate masters, just by rubbing the palm of their body with this palm, were instantly annihilated, and the gods were destroyed. Wu Jian looked up suddenly, his pupils shrank. He felt that the supreme palm falling from the sky was locked on him. Who is it? Wu Jianshuang's face was gloomy to the extreme. He did not expect that he had just stepped out of the starry sky, and someone had come to intercept him. Are you too, virtual temple? Or dragon? Wu Rong couldn't wait for the sword, and Wu Ji's exquisite sword emerged from the sheath instantly, turning into a shocking silver rainbow, splitting towards the giant palm that fell from the sky. Today's swords are unparalleled, and once again use the sword to cut star. How terrible the might, even if invincible dominates the face, under this sword will be killed. I saw this sword just like the Milky Way coming out of it. In a short breath, It condensed all the surrounding energy, and the silver sword rainbow was shining to the extreme, releasing an endless brilliance, severely chopped on the giant palm. However, such a horrible sword was cut on the giant palm, but it just stagnated a little, and was eroded by the horrible power in the giant palm, and pressed again towards the sword unparalleled. However, this lag time is enough for Jian Wushuang. Huh! Wu Jianwu stepped on his feet, moved away instantly, and appeared 100 miles away. 1. Omega Omega Omega. Kai, 1Z. C. Ka Rub. Pressing down on that palm, the pressed void was directly photographed into a huge black hole, which shattered countless void fragments. Starting Jian Wushuang, who was 100 miles away, panted slightly, as if he felt something, looked up into a void. Next moment, he saw a man in black with a hawk nose, walking out of the void with a hand. Jian Wushuang, do you still remember who this seat is? The man in black with a sneer saw Jian Wushuang dodging this palm, didn't care, and said with a sarcasm, "It's you." Yan Jian's eyes twinkled, and after taking a deep breath, he forced his heart's throbbing down and said with a sneer, "Extreme Black Hawk, how can I not remember?" For this person, when the two sides of the sword traveled the universe without a sword, the Black Hawk Supreme in the Diwu Temple that nearly killed him in the Jui Star Field. At the beginning, if it was not the Jiu Di Pavilion's heart-struck Supreme shot that prevented him, I am afraid that Jian Wushuang, who is already dead in the hand of the Black Eagle Supreme, is deprived of his special life level. Jian Wushuang, I haven't seen it for tens of thousands of years, but this one misses you very much. The Black Hawk stared at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Although he was laughing, the coldness in his voice was enough to freeze the blood. Wu Jianshuang heard his face expressionless, mobilized as much as he could, and his whole body was strained to the extreme. This is supreme. The highest existence in the universe. Even though it was him, he was already 1,000 times stronger than when he first met the Black Hawk Supreme, but now facing the Black Hawk Supreme, Jian Wushuang still feels a mountain-like pressure and comes down the mountain. He knows that this will be the most dangerous battle he has ever encountered. This battle no one can help him. All he can rely on is himself. Jian Wushuang, this seat now gives you two choices. The first one is to follow this seat to obediently return to the Diwu Temple for sanctions. The second is to deprive you of special life levels to honor this seat. Destroy the Spear of God, you choose. The Black Eagle Supreme complexion looks as if the of life and death has been set for Jian Wushuang, as if Jian Wushuang has become the fish on his chopping board and let it be slaughtered. Jian Wushuang, the taste of being deprived of a special life stiffly, I don't think you will be willing to experience it in your whole life. Speaking of which, a cruel color flashed in the eyes of the Black Eagle Supreme. Jian Wushuang heard the breath and breathed out a sigh of relief. I choose. Oh? Is this going to be captured? Black Hawk frowned, smiling slightly. Jian Wushuang, this time you're quite interesting. I didn't wait for him to finish. I choose you to die. Boom! Wu Jian stepped on the steps without a pair of steps, instantly acting like a missile, pulling out a white air wave, and slamming towards the Black Hawk Supreme. The horrifying sword gas strangled the quartet, forming a groundbreaking half-moon swordman, and in just one breath, he came to the top of the Black Hawk Supreme and slanted him away. Give me a shame, look for death. The Black Eagle Supreme complexion instantly became gloomy, his eyes flashed to the extreme. Chapter 4304. Second more. Facing this sword that divided the universe across the sea and turned up the shocking white waves, the Black Eagle Supreme expression was somber and grunted coldly, but he raised his finger and pointed toward the sword. That sword was unparalleled. Jian Wushuang, it seems that you still don't understand how big the gap is between the ultimate dominator and the Supreme. That's the difference in power. The Black Hawk shook his head, and suddenly, centered on his fingertips, a force that twisted space and time, folded space, burst out suddenly. Ha! Jian Wushuang's magnificent sword was hit by the Black Hawk Supreme again, and it suddenly became like a fortress piled up on the beach. It began to fall apart. What? Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank for a while, and a peculiar look surged on his face, and he couldn't bear to think about it, and felt a force that completely twisted and folded, banging heavily on his chest. Huh! Jian Wushuang's whole body retreated sharply, and a huge pit appeared in his chest. The Black Eagle Supreme saw this, and his negative hand sneered, "Sword unparalleled, give up the stupid struggle, recognize the status quo, the gap between the Supreme and the dominating realm, nothing can make up for." Jian Wushuang heard the words. His expression was cloudy for a while. He has infinitely elevated the supreme power in his heart, but only when he truly faced the Supreme at this moment did he realize that the horror of the Supreme far exceeded his expectations. I am afraid that the world is called comparable to the Supreme, but it just says that there are some killing tricks, which can be comparable to the Supreme ordinary blow. Come again. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang clenched the Wu weapon sword in his hand, and his eyes showed a strong fighting spirit. At the next moment, Jian Wushuang stepped on his right foot, and the whole man swept up again, splitting a sword towards the Supreme Black Hawk. Open the sky! Hey! For a while, the devil wailed, the Buddha's groaning voice poured out, and the Wu weeping sword quickly trembled, and a blood-colored sword rushed out, splitting towards the Black Eagle Supreme. The sword is unparalleled useless. The Black Hawk shook his head in contempt, facing the shocking sword, just throwing his sleeve. A black rainbow immediately flung out with this sleeve, this simple one sleeve. It seemed to have directly blasted out 1,000,000 tons of force, pushing the void into a channel, and hit the swordsman. The blood-colored swordman was directly worn away. Just then, a low, indifferent voice sounded in his ear. Talented, supernatural. Talented, amazing life. Dragon blood mystery, divine power burns. The law of the universe, 10 times the power of willpower. Suddenly, countless realms came. With sword blessings blessed by various forces, his breath began to skyrocket, and in just a few breaths of time, if the light of coercion, the sword blessings would have to surpass the Black Eagle Supreme. In addition to Tailu Jiandian's 2 killing moves, Jian Wushuang already has the means. Under the suppression of the primitive universe and the shock of life, the supreme atmosphere of the Black Hawk has begun to weaken indefinitely. Oh! Just as the Black Hawk gave a faint whisper, a cold voice sounded again. Chopper Star! Suddenly, space and time seemed to stagnate. Countless energies in the universe converged towards the sword without hands. Whether it was the shards of the void or the dark matter in the universe, etc., all turned into the purest energy, just like Baichuan entered the sea. Radiated in all directions, it finally merged into the sword without hands and turned into a silver sword rainbow of 5,000 feet. When this silver sword Hongfang appeared, it instantly took away all the glory in the world, and it was so dazzling that it was hard to look straight. As if a volume of Tianhe was held in the hands of Jian Wushuang's black hair was dangling and his expression was indifferent, just like the peerless sword immortal. Cut! With the sound of a cold drink, Jian Wushuang's right hand waved down, and the silver sword rainbow up to 5,000 feet was finally chopped down towards the Black Eagle Supreme. Oh, the previous trick was just a cover. Is this sword really a killing trick? The Black Hawk brow lightly commented casually, this sword is quite good, there is already some infinitely close to the power of the Supreme, but it is a pity that if it is not the Supreme, it is the ants. Shaking his head, Black Hawk turned over with his right hand, and a black sharp spear appeared in his hand. This short spear exudes a weird breath. Jian Wushuang just glanced at it and felt an aversion of disgust. Break me! The Black Hawk sighed, and the short spear fiercely stabbed to the ground. For a moment, no matter it was the primitive universe or the shock of life, it was as if it encountered natural enemies. Sword unparalleled. Do you still recognize this extermination spear? The Black Eagle sneered, his right hand quickly printed, and a black iris exploded quickly, striking the silver sword rainbow of Jian Wushuang's nearly 5,000 feet. Bang bang! Suddenly, the silver sword rainbow quickly collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Jian Wushuang's face changed slightly, And he would not forget the Exterminator Spear. According to the Supreme Killing Sword, the Exterminator Spear is a magic weapon specially used by Diwu Temple to restrain the special life such as Jian Wushuang. The advantages of cutting them to these special lives. Sword unparalleled, it's time to take this seat. The Black Eagle sneered, and swung his right hand heavily, and the stab of the extermination spear suddenly stabbed at the sword without a pair. Jian Wushuang's face was dignified, and he expelled hundreds of swords quickly, in order to stop this extermination spear. However, everything was useless. This exterminator spear brought up a long tail flame, and there was a burst of blast in the void where it was swept away. Open a fist-sized blood hole in your chest. Theoretically, with the restoration of Jian Wushuang's divine power, these injuries will be restored immediately. However, when Jian Wushuang poured out divine power to recover the divine body, he suddenly felt that the broken blood hole there is even a faint power that is suppressing the recovery of his body, and it is spreading around at a slow speed. This is the power of the Exterminator Spear. The next moment, the Black Hawk's figure flashed, as if moving instantly, appeared above Jian Wushuang, raised his right foot, and stepped down towards Jian Wushuang fiercely. A blast of shaking came from this place, and this foot directly stepped on the sole of the sword. Next moment, a divine power that is completely different from the realm of mastering the realm came down the mountain, suppressing the sword unparalleled, making him unable to move at all. The Black Eagle Supreme looked down with a sneer and looked down at Jian Wushuang, who was stepping on his foot, and scorned, "Jian Wushuang, now you are in this seat of life and death. What do you fight with this seat? Are you qualified to fight with this seat?" Jian Wushuang fell into danger instantly. P.S. 2 more arrived today. Chapter 4305. Karub. After the step of the Black Hawk Supreme, Jian Wushuang only felt that his bones and muscles were shaking. He tried to surge up the power to push the Black Hawk Supreme apart, but when he accumulated the power and hit the Black Hawk Supreme, he only felt just like a ball of cotton hitting a copper wall and an iron wall. The Black Eagle Supreme is unmoved. Perhaps the total power of the two is similar, but the quality is completely different. Extreme Divine Realm and Ultimate Master are completely different in essence. Is this the supreme power? Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank, and there was a consciousness in his heart. At this moment, when he truly faces the Supreme, he finally knows how big the gap is between the Supreme Divine Realm and the Ultimate Master. Someone has done statistics in the universe. There are tens of thousands of star fields in the universe and countless astral fields. Among these tens of thousands of star fields, the Supreme on the bright side adds up to less than 100. How many dominate the Ultimate? Too much to count. From this we can see how much the difference between the Ultimate Master and the Supreme. Even though he is the strongest master of the universe, such as King Jiolong, in the peak period of his strength, he is only comparable to the Supreme. What is the solution? Refers to the supreme blow of King Jiojie. But this does not mean that the King of Nine Dragons can truly be compared with the Supreme. Jian Wushuang, aren't you very powerful? Aren't you the first person in Shinkongulu? Now you stand up for this seat. Black Eagle Supreme looked down at Jian Wushuang, his face full of sneer. He said as he stepped on the right foot of Sword Wushuang hardly, and for a moment, the sword's body suddenly made an overwhelming clicking sound. Under this step, countless bones and veins of the sword unparalleled. In the distance, many daring ultimate masters did not leave, but watching this scene from afar, there was a chill in their hearts. Is this the supreme terror? Jian Wushuang, who is able to cross the invincible ancient road in the starry sky, has no backhand in front of the supreme. Too strong. The sword before Wushuang's sword has been beyond my understanding. It is estimated to be able to kill anyone who dominates the realm. I never thought it would be broken only by the supreme sleeve. It is no wonder that ever since the birth of the universe, there has never been a record of the Lord's victory over the supreme. The supreme power is too terrifying. The sword is unparalleled. They shook their heads. At the beginning, they didn't know it was Jian Wushuang, but as the Black Hawk Supreme called Jian Wushuang's name, they suddenly came to realize that this handsome young man with a stern look was the latest in the universe. Wu's sword is unparalleled. There were many people. After Jian Wu double-clicked to kill the prisoner dragon, it was deemed that Jian Wushuang had the qualifications to sit on par with Supreme, but until now, when they saw the scene where Jian Wushuang was crushed by Black Hawk Supreme, I realized that my eyelids were too shallow and I didn't know the gap between the Master and the Supreme. Starting that kind of gap is almost like of nature. No matter what the amazing talents and supernatural powers, it can't be crossed. The Black Eagle Supreme looked back at them and did not mean to drive them away. He is not a genius. Breaking through the Supreme can be described as barely extreme. Even if he is in the territory of the Supreme God, he is not a strong person. Therefore, he particularly likes to step on those feet with amazing talents and humiliate, to satisfy the perverted pleasure in my heart. The sword is unparalleled. Obediently surrender to this seat. Maybe this seat can give you a happy, otherwise, this seat will crush your bones inch by inch, and then strip your cultivation and special life, let you feel the ultimate pain. Black Eagle Supreme looked down at Xiang Wushuang, smirking. Submit? Are you worthy? Jian Wushuang's expression was cold. He hacked a sword and chopped it towards the Black Eagle Supreme. Although he was suppressed by the Black Hawk Supreme, it does not mean that he has no fighting power. Is this seat worthy? Well, sword unparalleled, then you can see if this seat is worthy. The Black Eagle's face flashed sharply, crushing the sword that Xiang Wushuang cut off immediately, and then a violent supreme divine power was blasted out of his feet, and it was the direct separation of the sword Wushuang deities nearly collapse. A heartbreak of pain came, but Jian Wushuang never frowned, and he turned to look at the sandalwood sword box on the back. His thoughts flashed. Do you want to use this sword? Once you use it, you will kill him at that time, but it's not the Black Eagle Supreme, but the powers that really stand on top of the universe. Sword Wushuang, since you don't know what to do, don't blame this seat for being ruthless. Let's die. The Black Eagle flickered in the eyes of the Black Eagle Supreme, and finally moved his heart. At the same time, in the Temple of Life in the depths of the universe, take a piece of paper newsletter and pass it directly to the Supreme Temple. Report. Extreme blood and blood waves, Jyoti Pavilion on Shinkong Ancient Road, urgent news. A disciple of the Life Shrine walked hurriedly outside the hall, his face panicked to the extreme. Why is this so panic? Bloodwave Supreme frowned and asked. The disciple of Life Shrine half knelt on the ground with a slam on his forehead, and sweat continued to flow from his forehead. Bloodwave Supreme, just now there was an urgent message from Jyoti Pavilion, and Jian Wushuang just came out of the ancient sky and was hit by Diwu Temple Black Shadow Supreme interception. I'm afraid at this moment. What? Suddenly, Bloodwave Supreme's complexion suddenly changed, and he stood up from his seat, staring at the disciple of life and shouting, saying, "What the is going on? You give this seat say clearly." The disciple at the Temple of Life shook the eyes of Supreme Bloodwave Supreme as if he wanted to eat, and his heart suddenly became cold, so he didn't dare to delay in half. He quickly sent a newsletter from Jioding Pavilion on Shinkong Ancient Road, 1510 say it quickly. After he finished speaking, Bloodwave Supreme was instantly furious. Bold. Blackhawk, you look for death. Boom! I seen he hold back any more, soaring into the sky. Under this killing intention, the entire Shrine of Life is shrouded, as if trapped in a sea of blood. Blood. What happened? Suddenly, within the Palace of Life, several other Supremes felt this boiling and terrifying intention, all of which changed quickly and quickly came. Sun Zuibo's eyes were cold, and he replied word by word. Jian Wushuang was intercepted in the ancient road by the sky. What? Who intercepted Jian Wushuang? There are a few supreme faces facing each other, and there is a little in my heart. Sun Zuibo's eyes stared into the distance, coldly. Diu Temple, Black Hawk Supreme. After speaking, the Supreme Master of Bloodwaves no longer cares about them. Under one step, the whole person has left the Palace of Life. The next moment, his cold voice sounded in the hall. I'm here to save the sword unparalleled. Whoever blocks me today is the enemy of my blood. Chapter 4306. This. After hearing the words of hesitation on the faces of the Supreme Masters, they just remembered to chase after him, and advised the Supreme Master of Blood to not be so reckless, and an indifferent ancient voice sounded from their ears. Let him go. The Supreme Master heard each other face to face, and finally nodded and sighed, yes. Supreme Lord. Outside of the Temple of Life, the Blood Wave Supreme turned into a scorpion, directly exploding all speed, and killed towards the ancient road of the starry sky. I saw him at the Gate of Life Shrine at the last moment, and then he appeared on another star field. At this moment, Blood Wave Supreme directly used the star jumping technique, and each time the figure flickered, it was hundreds of millions of miles. However, before he walked halfway from the ancient road to the sky, a black giant hand shot at him. Bloodwave, stay. Okay. Bloodwave paused suddenly, and after smashing the giant hand with a random blow, he stared at the void shot by the giant hand. I saw a majestic middle-aged man wearing a purple gold suit wearing a purple gold crown with flowers, birds, and beasts embroidered on it, stepping out of the void step by step. This person is a mysterious and unpredictable master of the Diwu Temple. Seeing the Supreme, he suddenly smiled angrily and said, "This place is so big-faced that the master of the Diwu Temple actually took the initiative to block it." After hearing the words, the master of Diwu Shrine smiled slightly and said, "Oh, your blood is the chief supreme of Life Shrine. When others come to stop you, this deity is naturally uneasy, so you have to do it yourself." He Xuanwen heard that even if he faced the master of the Diwu Shrine in the famous universe, he didn't have half a dreadful look on his face, and his eyes flashed deadly. "Kuroba, do you really want to stop me here?" The master of the Diwu Shrine stepped in the void, stood with his hands up, and shook his head. "Blood, you give up. You are not your opponent. Sword is unparalleled. No one can save him today." Bloodwave Supreme heard that his face was expressionless, but in his heart a heart kept sinking. He knew that the black feather was right, he was not his opponent. Taking a deep breath, the Bloodwave Supreme looked coldly at the master of Diwu Temple and said, "In order to kill this disciple who is the ultimate master of the realm, you have really worked hard. Not only did you send the Supreme to intercept and kill, you as the temple, it's such a great skill that the Lord himself came to stop it." The master of the Diwu Temple, how can I not listen to the irony in the discourse of Supreme Master Qinghai? But he just smiled indifferently. "Your palace of life has already produced a king of 9 calamities, and there must never be another 9 calamities." King. After a pause, he shook his head again and said, "No, according to the strength of Jiu Jie Wang in the ultimate dominion, compare with Jian Wushuang. I am afraid that after the sword Wushuang breaks through the Supreme, the strength will be far better than Jiu Jie Wang. Once it exists, it will naturally kill as soon as possible so as to prevent the future." Bloodwave Supreme heard the expression gloomy. His eyes flashed to the extreme. After a moment, Bloodwave Supreme took a deep breath and slowly said, "Hey you, let's wait and see, my disciple may not die." "Is that so?" The master of Diwu Shrine smiled slightly, not caring. Bloodwave Supreme heard no more answer, but can only hope that Jian Wushuang can create a miracle again and get out of the hands of the Black Eagle Supreme, such as, once again using the last life-saving magical power against the prison dragon. However, what he didn't know was that Diwu Shrine had already conducted a detailed and extreme investigation of Jian Wushuang, including Jian Wushuang's last divine power decomposition, which was also under their control. It can be said that they have made 100% preparations for killing the sword unparalleled. Xingkong Ancient Road Entrance. Jian Wushuang, this time you will not be as lucky as last time. This time, no one will come to save you again. The Black Eagle supremely looked down at Jian Wushuang, sneer with cruel color. "Sword unparalleled, come on, let this seat torture you little by little, let you die in pain." The Black Eagle supremely grinned, and forced his feet, began to start the sword Wushuang from his feet, crushing his body by an inch. Click, click. Jian Wushuang's indestructible body, under the Black Hawk stepping down, suddenly broke down and broke apart. In addition, the Black Eagle supremely controlled the divine power to a subtle level, which would not only make Jian Wushuang's body completely collapse and explode, but also make Jian Wushuang feel endless suffering. This supreme mind is very good at poisoning. How much hatred this person has with Jian Wushuang. To torture Jian Wushuang so much. Jiang Wushuang really has a lot of fate. It was so difficult to kill the prisoner dragon in the Shinkong Ancient Road, but unexpectedly, he just came out of the Shinkong Ancient Road and encountered the supreme interception. In the distance, some of the ultimate masters watching this scene shook their heads and booed. In their hearts, the Black Hawk is extremely shameless, but no one dares to say it, and can only shake his head constantly. Jian Wushuang, do you really regret it now? It was better to be killed by this seat when you were in Jui Starfield? Otherwise, how would you be tortured now? The Black Eagle Supreme laughed a lot, but when he looked at the sword unparalleled from beginning to end, he suddenly felt boring. Why was he dying and not asking for mercy? Shouldn't he kneel in front of himself at this time, begging himself to spare him? Shouldn't he cry with tears, despair and remorse? Well, swords matchless die. The Black Eagle snorted coldly, and there was a murder in his eyes. No longer intending to delay, he raised his foot and stepped towards Jian Wushuang's head. This foot is rushing to the sword unparalleled life. It's now. Jian Wu's eyes flickered. Wu Wei's Excalibur had disappeared quietly, and boundless darkness poured out from under him, toward the Black Eagle Supreme. Forever night. With a low sip and a moment of time, a ray of black mist completely wrapped the Black Hawk Supreme. This is... Suddenly the Black Eagle Supreme had no time to say a word, and was immediately dragged into the kingdom of the night. A huge round black ball wrapped the Black Hawk Supreme inside. A strip of breath began to take away everything that belongs to the Black Hawk Supreme. Jian Wushuang took advantage of this opportunity to swoop up, turned his hands to take out a lot of magic medicine from the Qingkuan ring, and took it by mouth. After doing all this, Jian Wushuang's expression still dare not relax at all, staring at the Black Eagle supremely surrounded by black spheres. His whole Buddhist divine power was tense. Swords warriors! An anger came to an extreme roar, emanating from the black ball, and the next moment, I saw the kingdom of eternal night, which broke apart inch by inch. It's like a glass bead, cracking like cracks. The next moment, the whole kingdom of eternal night collapsed. Wu Weeping Sword wailed and flew back, held in his hand by the sword unparalleled. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.